Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
New Seas Ahead by Peacelight24. Nakama means you never have to say goodbye or be alone, in which Monkey D. Lucy, future Pirate King, and Roronoa Zoro, future world's greatest swordsman, are dumb and everyone else is long-suffering. Or, things with them are always do or die, and love is just the same. Nakama ship, pining, Zorox Fem Lucy. Adios.
I'll grab another bottle, Lucy hears. Leerily she tugs against the thick moss in her brain. She feels floaty, kind of melty, if that's a word, warm. Well, she's probably warm because she's got, like, 6 blankets and Zoro's jacket and the oversized shorts on. Plus, bandages. But also, the bed is warm. Like, really warm, like actually pretty hot. Oh, that's Zoro, underneath her. She's got her face pressed to his haramaki and her arms around his waist. Her ribcage is stretched over his thigh in a way that should probably be uncomfortable because of her injuries, but isn't. He's sitting up against the wall just as Lucy's knees knock against it, while Zoro's feet point toward the door. Lucy should, maybe, feel bad about the fact that she somehow managed to trap Zoro in bed with her. She does not. She feels the opposite of bad, actually. Especially when she notices his fingers playing with her hair, combing out invisible tangles from the short locks. A quick check with her haki confirms the rest of her nakama, Torao, Bellamy, the samurai and Kairos are also in the room. The faint hum of tension eases into serenity, her friends accounted for. She tries to move, nuzzle into Zoro and let him know she's awake, but she can't. Her body feels sluggish, her limbs weighted down by something syrupy and cloying and heavy, like waking up from the deepest stages of sleep but worse. Something in her brain pings an alarm, a soft tinkle of discord, but it's drowned out by the heavy black labyrinth in her head. Panicking takes too much effort, and Lucy doesn't even know what she'd be panicking about, because everything is soft and warm and Zoro smells like Zoro and Lucy thinks maybe someone slipped her some more of the pain drugs while she was asleep. She feels kinda like that word Zoro used earlier. Lucky, Lounja, Long Y, Lewis, Lou, Loopy, she's loopy. Yep, definitely Lewis, yep, that. She almost wants to drop off to sleep and have sleep hallucinations or whatever, but she's sort of awake sort of not, and then Kairo's voice flickers with interest as he accepts something and there's a soft clink of glass as Zoro shifts toward the gladiator a little, and then what? What? Is she supposed to do something? Is she doing things? Zoro's voice cuts through the confusion. Your house is well built. Didn't make a noise last night, when I was sneaking around. It's interesting hearing him now, with her ear pressed to his belly. It's low and rumbly and distracting enough to let her latch onto the words. Lucy feels Zoro shift a little, his arm moving up to his mouth. Drinking? Zoro's drinking. Probably. That's honestly just a good guess at any given time, though. Thank you. I built it for my wife and daughter, nearly 20 years ago now. Huh. That's Kairos. But you're going to leave? Leave? Who's leaving? Why are people leaving? Some of her nakama already left and it's gonna be fine because Sanji'll take care of them and Sanji'll be fine and everything, cause Eva-chan trained him and Sanji's super strong anyway. But she doesn't like the idea of the rest of her nakama leaving because last time they got split up she was alone and alone is. Oh. Kairos is leaving. Mind if I ask why? Yeah, Zoro, ask him why. Kairos shouldn't be leaving. Kairos has got a kid. But then Dragon left and he had a kid and so did Gramps and maybe that's not a good reason to stay. Lucy thought it was just her that gets left behind and stuff, but maybe it's just a thing that parents do sometimes. When Kairos speaks, there's shame and regret in his voice. When I was young I committed a horrible crime. The worst one a man can commit. Lucy's brain blanks out, fizzes to a halt, and she would fist her hands in Zoro's shirt if she could move her hands, but she feels like she does when a building falls on her and she can't wriggle out of it. Rape? Kairos raped. Zoro must look confused, because Kairos continues. Murder? I killed the 2 men who killed my best friend. I didn't regret it at the time. I very much do, now. Zoro makes a little awe sound of comprehension. Lucy's brain jiggles free of the gridlock, and then she's feeling melty again. Revenge is no good. I can't say the thoughts never occurred to me before, though. Lucy wonders who he's considered avenging before. Can't be her. She wins all her fights. Except one. Like, the most important one. Sabo said it wasn't her fault, so, it probably wasn't. Except Sabo wasn't there, so he might not know that Ace was right there. As if in response to the thought, Zoro presses his calloused thumb down between her shoulder blades, finding and releasing pressure points as he goes. She can't move, but the sharp alarm fades at the gesture. If you value your soul, you'll never kill, Kairos intones, low and formidable. Lucy can't quite put her finger on why that bothers her, but she can think of lots of reasons to kill that wouldn't be revenge or anything stupid. She was willing to kill for Dressrosa. For Torao. She's always ready to kill for her nakama, and honestly if someone seriously threatened Chopper, Lucy wouldn't think twice. I have before, Zoro says dully, frank and upfront. Lucy's always known he's killed. Lucy's killed too. Not for fun or anything, just because she had to, and he was a mean lion guy who wanted to hurt Robin and all her other nakama too. She wants to nuzzle into Zoro's stomach, press her face against the familiar Haramaki as best she can because something about him seems tense and uncomfortable, and she's known he's a good man since the moment she saw him. But Zoro doesn't always seem to realize that about himself. Which is stupid. Because Zoro is great. And the world's greatest swordsman. Or will be soon. I could tell. Kairos replies, sounding vaguely sympathetic. Blood on one's hands never washes off. Lucy kind of feels frowny, along with the floaty feeling. Kairos is weird. She's a little not sure why he's weird at the moment, but she's, like, 90% certain he just insulted Zoro. Maybe? Possibly? She doesn't know? Zoro's only response is an indifferent, Zoro can handle himself. He's like, really strong and stuff. That's why I can't be a father, Kairos continues. He sounds forlorn. Tired. Rebecca deserves so much better than me. Well, that doesn't seem right. Lucy's pretty sure Rebecca just wants to live in a house with her family. She distinctly remembers Rebecca saying something like that. And something about sunflowers. Zoro seems to think the same. Everybody's got issues. Those things never had to control them. There's a swish sound as Zoro takes a swig of the liquor. Riku wouldn't have let you marry his daughter if you didn't know that. Kairos says nothing in response. Zoro surprises Lucy a little when he continues. He sounds sort of distant. The way Lucy feels right now. Speaking from experience, quarantining your darkness isn't the same as controlling it. The frowny feeling comes back. Lucy doesn't like that tone in his voice, and Haki whispers something undefinable in the low, echoing gong of Zoro's heart. It makes her think of when she told Zoro that he's hers and she's his, and he kind of not cried for a while, like he didn't believe her. Zoro's hers. Hers, 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 hers. There's a pause, and she feels Kairos's eyes on the back of her head. You and Lucy-san are. Zoro brushes her bangs away from her face. Lucy kind of wishes she could figure out how to open her eyes, look up at him, because can tell what he's feeling, and she's pretty sure his eyes are the mercury silver they get like sometimes when she says she loves him. Is all Zoro says in response. There's a warmth in his voice that makes Lucy feel meltier than she already did. Does. Is. Was. Were. How do you accept it? She seems very. Kairos trails off, uncertain. Zoro seems perfectly happy to continue for him. Childish? Lacking in impulse control? Lucy should, like, pinch him or something. And then cuddle. She likes cuddling with Zoro. Like a lot. It's like meat but better, 'cause Zoro doesn't s. I was going to say something like pure, Kairos corrects. Zoro says nothing. Lucy is just confused because she's never been called anything like that in the history of ever. Dayton's favorite epithet aside from brat was hellion, and sometimes devil spawn, if she and Ace got up to something particularly troublesome. You aren't afraid of tainting her, or Lucy can make her own decisions. Zoro interrupts. His thumb grazes her cheekbone. Calluses dragging against the delicate skin beneath her eye, but it isn't unpleasant, especially because her face feels kind of numb from the drugs her nakama probably gave her. Lucy's pretty sure she just drooled on him. Whoops. She's not as naive as she puts on. Kairos makes a despairing sort of noise, and Lucy hears the thunk of glass against wood as he sets his liquor down. Rebecca is not as worldly as that. Oh, yeah, 'cause Lucy's traveled the world and stuff. So she's worldly. But there's lots more to see and she wants to see everything. Has to, actually, so Nami can make her map. Maps. Book of Maps. There should be a word for that. Zoro surprises her a little, sounding slightly harsher than she's expecting when he speaks. It makes her, not tense, but alert. Wary. She checks on the room's occupants again, her haki echoing against her nakama and allies reassuringly. No offense, but she lived in that coliseum, and even if she wasn't actually an orphan, she believed she was one all this time. There's an unmistakable sound of wood groaning under pressure. Kairos's voice sounds like a whistling kettle, and Zoro's rises louder in irritation. Lucy feels odd. Confused. Tense. Zoro sighs, and it seems like a conscious effort to relax as the gong eases down usual deep, calmer tone. Look, Lucy didn't give me much of a choice. I doubt Rebecca will either, if you ask her input. She's a child, she doesn't know what she needs. She's old enough to fight, and if you don't want to be her father, don't make decisions on her behalf. Lucy feels like cheering, or something. She's not sure, so she inhales slowly and mentally recoils at the persistent stench of the cabin. But Zoro smells like blood and steel and sake under all his sweat, and so she can put up with a little bow. I want. Kairos starts, angry. Then pauses. Begins quiet and longing again. I want that very much. But this is the most I can provide her with. Well, I'm not a parent. I don't know anything about it. There's a slurping sound, and then a dull thud as Zoro sets his tumbler down. You can finish the sake. I'm going to sleep. Zoro, she can tell, doesn't like his decision. Lucy's having a little trouble understanding why. Consistency. No, it's context. Context is difficult, at the moment. The only thing she's completely sure of is that they're all safe, because Zoro is here, letting her hold him while he draws his fingers through her hair with something close to reverence, and his katana are rattling softly with every shift of the bed at his feet. Wasn't it mine in the first place? Kairos asks, referring to the sake. Lucy pities him. He obviously doesn't get how much Zoro likes sake. All sake is his sake, unless Nami steals it as a matter of alleviating his crushing debt. But Zoro must like her more than sake, even, because he untangles her arms from his waist and shifts down on the mattress clumsily. He accidentally knees her in the back a couple times as he maneuvers around her, but he eventually manages to claim a strip of the mattress at Lucy's back. She would turn to him if she could, press herself into the space under his chin until they were close enough that she wouldn't be able to distinguish her breath from his body heat. It turns out Zoro has similar ideas, though, because then his arms curl around her waist and he pulls her back into his front. Lucy's brain blanks out in syrupy satisfaction because she can't be sure of where she ends and Zoro begins because she's warm and so is he, and the bed's warm and Lucy feels herself slipping under again, falling back into true unconsciousness as Zoro's nose shifts her hair and his knees lock into the joint of hers. Hey, you can keep it, Zoro says, his voice quiet and his breath blows the hair from the nape of her neck. His lips graze the skin there when he speaks and there's a smirk in his voice, or maybe something fond. We should spar, next time. Next time, Kairos agrees. Zoro adjusts her arm, pulls her hand back to her stomach, and laces his fingers through her as he lays their joined hands over her navel. Something painful blooms in her chest as she remembers that Zoro loves her. And, honestly, they've fallen asleep like this who knows how many times, but for some reason this feels terribly intimate, like something precious and private, and she can't help but feel it has something to do with the waves of affection rolling off of Zoro and the vague sense that they aren't close enough, even now. Something hot stokes in her belly, right beneath Zoro's hand, and if Lucy weren't drugged out of her mind right now she would blush at the realization. But the room is quiet after that and Zoro's breaths are slow and unbothered and calm, and Lucy wonders for the first time if he can sense her fleeting alertness, if he's trying to intentionally lull her into relaxation. The thought is foggy though, rendered through a haze, and his steady presence at her back and the slow rise and fall of his chest is soothing, steady, the paired heartbeat of the tiny universe known only to the two of them. It is silent in the cabin, apart from Usopp and Frankie's snores, and the heavy labyrinth in Lucy's head collapses in liquid. Ebony sheets into her consciousness. The texture satiny and insubstantial as she eases deep into the dark of sleep, feeling like she's flying and falling at once. Zoro always did have a way of making her feel free. Is it weird that we're always running for our lives when we leave islands? Lucy asks absently, and casually leaps over a pile of rubble, dragging Robin along with her for the sake of speed. Beside her, Usopp pants and Frankie's giant shoulders swing on the edge of her periphery. "We are pirates," Robin replies, sprinting a few strides behind her back. It is probably to be expected. There was still meat on the dining table, Lucy complains, setting one arm over her rumbling stomach. "I could have eaten it." "Not without choking," Zoro says distractedly. He's keeping pace a few steps behind Robin and, when Lucy looks for him over her shoulder, she sees his attention on some buildings on their left. "Don't get lost, Zoro," she warns. "We're running for our lives." "I never get lost," Zoro snaps. Lucy stares at him incredulously. "Dude," says Frankie. "Dude," says Usopp. "Dude," says approximately 3 other people running with them who have taken it upon themselves to corral Zoro in the right direction because he kept veering off at random vectors perpendicular or opposite to the desired one. Honestly, Lucy's not sure, exactly, why all the guys from the Colosseum are helping them out, but she's not complaining. The little fairies, dwarves, whatever, have been especially useful with keeping her swordsman with the group. "What?" Zoro snaps at them all, indignant. "It is all right, Zoro-senpai. The world's greatest swordsman does not need to understand trivial things like directions." "I can understand directions, ahead of them." The path slopes down between the great boulders that ring the island, the blue of the sea glimmering before them in a slivered window between the rock. Wind funnels between the stone, up the path, and it tears laughingly at Lucy's clothes and hair as they sprint. The air smells of salt and sea brine, and it makes Lucy grin wildly as something in her gut lurches in eager response. The sea has always meant freedom to Lucy. Somewhere along the way it became home as well. "Whose ship are we taking?" Frankie shouts over his shoulder. The big guy with thick yellow braids grunts in response, his lumbering steps shaking the earth with every stride. "They take time, eager." Lucy's eyes are locked on the opening horizon. That may be why she didn't sense the purple admiral guy until he launched an attack at her head, his sandals clip-clopping on the cobblestone installed at the beach. She doesn't quite sense him in time to dodge though, and so she braces herself with hockey boiling painfully on her skin. A set of blades and a pair of familiar broad shoulders intercepts the blow instead. Attacking an unsuspecting opponent, Zoro huffs, not very sporting. The entire party of their allies and Nakama stop in surprise or shock or both. Well, except Rooster, who squeaks in something like delirious joy. Lucy's not really sure, the noise sounds painful. "That's true," the Admiral agrees, still walking placidly forward. "I was expecting my opponent to sense me though." Lucy frowns, irritated. Completely draining her hockey like she did the other day. Her senses have been a little off. She's not great with observation hockey in the first place, and now it feels like she has a cold. "Go on, everyone," Zoro urges. "I'll hold him off while we wait for Law." Lucy hums, eyeing the Admiral curiously. "How far away is he?" "He's close," Zoro grunts, and places Wado in his mouth. "Couple minutes, tops." "I shall hold this obstacle off," Rooster crows eagerly, sprinting up to Zoro and Lucy with a terrifyingly eager smile on his face. "For Lucy Dono and Zoro-senpai." Lucy squints at him, feeling like there's something she's missing. Robin laughs softly behind her. "It's fine," Lucy tells him. "There's something I want to ask him." She feels the collective spike of surprise around her, and feels it ebb away just as quick. Zoro nods. "Me too." Lucy looks at Rooster. "Protect everyone else, okay?" Rooster doesn't react for a moment, but then there are tears. Lots of tears. Lucy doesn't know, she's very confused by Rooster. "Oi, Straw Hat," Cabbage protests, "don't be stupid, he's an admiral." Lucy rolls her shoulders, trying to get rid of the lingering stiffness. So he could kill us all in a second if he wanted to, Cabbage yelps, irritation bleeding in his voice. "He's an admiral, pirates are supposed to get out of the way when we see those, didn't you ever learn that?" Lucy turns to look Cabbage in the eye, and she lets steel coat her voice. Yes. Usopp and Frankie shift uncomfortably. Robin leans closer, just enough to brush shoulders with Lucy, and Zoro says nothing at all as he stares the Admiral down. Cabbage doesn't quite back off sheepishly, but something about the way his eyes flash says he knows he's overstepped some invisible boundary, and Lucy takes pity on him. 2 years ago I would have run too, Lucy admits, but not anymore. I'm going to be Pirate King. She smirks. Shichibukai and Yonko and admirals. I promise to beat them all. The swell of affection and pride from her nakama feels warm and effusive, with the 4 of them placed around her as they are. Yeah, Lucy's strong enough to make sure the rest of us don't die. And Zoro will make sure Lucy doesn't get herself killed. Usopp reassures their allies. He claps Zoro on the shoulder once. Zoro doesn't outwardly react, but Lucy raises an eyebrow when Usopp shrinks back at the mild spike of irritation Zoro emits at the touch. Usopp doesn't have, does he? Rooster is nearly non-functional at this point. He looks very close to catatonic. Then, I shall stay in service to Lucy Dono. This is all very stupid, Cabbage complains, but he backs down and Lucy sees grudging respect in his eyes. We'll stay too, Robin says quietly, and Lucy doesn't even bother telling them no, because Frankie and Usopp are just as resolute as her archaeologist is. Their allies form a ring around her nakama, clearly hesitant to leave them be. Lucy wonders at that, but feels grateful for the show of support nonetheless. The Admiral's cane knocks against the ground sedately, his pace never slowing. Lucy steps forward, lets hockey blaze on her fist as she edges ahead of Zoro. Straw Hat Lucy and her crew members, eh? The man says lowly, his blank eyes calm. I better not underestimate you. He stops moving forward, stops moving entirely except to raise his cane and a wave of dark purple energy pulses out as he lifts his arm, and suddenly the island itself shakes in response. Lucy remembers fighting this guy with Zoro. He's strong, powerful, and back then he was containing himself to avoid hurting the citizens of Dressrosa. Lucy and Zoro had their own handicaps at the time, but they were equally matched, and now. Lucy doesn't notice what he's doing right away, but then shadow falls over the beach, strange and unnatural. Whoa, she looks up, shocked, and her hand flies back to tilt the brim of her hat up. Above their heads swirls what must be the debris from the entire island of Dressrosa. Everything destroyed in course of the battle. Everything too broken to be fixed. The Admiral's purple aura pulses out and up and Lucy hears Usopp squeak in terror as the mass of debris condenses into a heavy, unholy sphere of concrete above their heads. Oh wait, I wanted to ask you something. Lucy chirps, heedless of the staggering amount of kinetic force the man raised so effortlessly. Aneki, Frankie hedges. Maybe, you're high up in the Navy, right? Lucy presses. How's Gramps? Usopp offers a surprised laugh, and the Admiral's face goes blank immediately. The strange sense of force and warped perception eases slightly for just a moment, then returns harsher than before. The Admiral hesitates. That's what you wanted to ask me? Lucy bobs her head in a nod, and then realizes the Admiral is blind and can't see the action. Yep. She's been wondering what happened to her grandfather for a while now, because Qin Zhao mentioned not being able to find him earlier, and spoke like he was nowhere to be seen on the sea, and that didn't exactly worry Lucy, because Gramps is super strong, but she isn't sure. She wants to know if he's around, or not. He retired from active duty after the war, the Admiral replies, seemingly out of pure shock at being asked. He's still with the Marines. He teaches classes at the academy, does special assignments. That sort of thing. Huh. So Gramps is retired. Weird, but it sounds like he's fine, so. Cool, we can fight now. Finally, Zoro grunts, his blades poised. Gears whir in Frankie's arms as he makes to fight. Lucy's lips pull back into a wicked grin and she rushes forward, her fists black with her resolve. The child was honored well. The Admiral's parting words echo in Zoro's ears as he looks around the deck of the Yantamaria. The ship is huge, probably 5 or 6 times the size of the Sunny, and Zoro can appreciate good craftsmanship when he sees it. Frankie seems impressed too, and he gushes with another shipwright about support structures and mast height as Rooster breaks out a set of saucers in the corner. Huh, It almost looks like, beside him, Law sighs. Zoro raises an eyebrow at him, and the other man just gestures tiredly at Lucy, who's managed to get herself stuck in the rigging. That's gotta be a record, Law mutters. Zoro snorts, amused, not even close. Learning to abide by Lucy's general propensity to get into anything and everything is something of a survival skill when running around with her. He is kind of hoping she doesn't end up in the water though. Salt water does not feel good on still open wounds. He knows this from experience. Lucy Dono, Rooster calls, sounding eager. Please come down and grace us with your presence. Don't say it like that, Cabbage complains. The giant plucks Lucy out of the rope with a surprising amount of grace for someone so large. We have a proposition for your consideration, the director guy says, his language unusually flowery. He sounds like Kanamon. See, we realized we actually get along pretty well, over the last few days, the long arm guy explains. And we realized we all admire you. Lucy, just now righting herself on the deck as the giant steps back in Lee, just blinks at them, her expression blank with surprise. Me, she scrunches her nose. Why? The sheer level of gob-smacked confusion on the others' collective faces forces Zoro to smother a grin behind his hand. On his right, Usopp and Robin do the same. Lucyland saved us. Beat up Doflamingo and is really nice. Usoland respects Lucyland. The Tontata exclaims, enthusiastic and earnest, his gold needle swishing back and forth with his excitement. Lucy nods, almost absent-minded. Yeah, that was fun. Much as it pains me, Cabbage says dramatically, flicking blonde curls over his shoulder. They're right. I, begrudgingly, find myself continually impressed with you, Straw Hat. He frowns, and behind him his horse pins his ears. I might serve under you, but that doesn't mean you're going to be more popular than me. Lucy scratches her head, knocking the hat back. I don't get it. We're all going off apart after this, right? Lucy Dono, Rooster intones with a sort of incongruous level of seriousness. Rooster wasn't capable of using a normal level of volume control around Lucy even 2 hours ago. We ask that you exchange Sakazuki cups with us, so we may become your followers. Lucy blinks. Once. Twice. You want to what? Oh, damn, the look on Lucy's face. She looks like someone just told her she couldn't be Pirate King but annoyed. Shit, if he looks at any of his nakama, he's going to lose it completely. He can hear Usopp laughing and it takes a hefty amount of self-control to avoid echoing the sentiment with his own bark of laughter. We've prepared the cups, Lucy Dono, Rooster repeats. He gestures to a particularly large cup perched on a barrel, already filled with an unusually large amount of sake. Please, drink, and you shall become our boss. Lucy walks over to the barrel and frowns at it, her expression something closer to dismay than anything else. She picks it up, and liquid nearly spills over the rim. Rooster and a few of the other men trying to adopt Lucy as their overlord grin. Yeah, Lucy says, a grin of apology on her face, I'm not gonna drink this. It's Robin's turn to lose it and Zoro nearly swallows his own tongue in an effort to avoid laughing at the expression on Law's face. What? Rooster squeals, I don't like this sake much, Lucy says, setting the overlarge cup back on the barrel. So I'm not gonna drink it. Zoro walks up to the barrel, just catching the strange look in her eye before it flashes away. Lucy glances at him, a smile tugging at her lips. Zoro cups his hand in the ridiculous trough of sake, and brings the liquid to his lips. It's sweet and has just the right amount of burn. Zoro mentally congratulates Rooster on his taste. It's not about, look, the sake is about the vow, and you shouldn't be drinking it. Zoro looks up at Rooster. It's good. Thank you, Zoro-senpai. No, wait. You have to drink the sake, Rooster repeats, pointing to Lucy. Yeah, that's how you get Lucy to do something, Usopp mutters, but he still sounds a bit breathless. You order her. That always works out well for people. I don't want to, Lucy says petulantly, clearly a bit annoyed. Zoro shows Usopp the ridiculous saucer of sake and finds himself glad Usopp has built up his alcohol tolerance over the last 2 years. More drinking buddies on the crew can only be a good thing, especially since it's usually only him and Nami that make it any decent length of time. But, Lucy Dono, Rooster entreats. After this the whole world is going to be after you. They'll come for you and no matter how strong you are, You'll need some help to fight them off. That's what we want to do. As repayment for saving us this time, we want to fight alongside you again, as your subordinates." The crowd of colorful people behind Rooster nod in unison, and Zoro raises an eyebrow. Lucy made more of an impression than he realized. "Damn, this sake's good. If I drink the sake, I'll become the grand captain of the fleet though, right?" Lucy asks, confusion and distaste written all over her face. Rooster grins, clearly thinking his point has hit home with Lucy. "Yes. With a fleet of 5,600 in total, there will be no one who can stand in your way." Rooster throws up his hands in enthusiasm. "You'll be Pirate King eventually, and soon you'll need more followers, but if you want to conquer the world." Zoro takes pity on Rooster. "Oi, you better stop." Rooster pauses, blinking rapidly at the interruption. Zoro can't quite help the pride in his chest from leaking into his voice when he cocks his chin at Lucy. That kind of thinking doesn't work with her. The giant looks annoyed now too. "Straw Hat, it seems strange to wish against assembling such a mighty military force," he says lowly, his deep voice booming against the oak of the ship. "I'm sure you'll need our help one day, just as we needed yours today." Lucy scowls, looking terribly annoyed. "I need my space." The crowd of men trying to profess their loyalty to Lucy look utterly confused, and Zoro chuckles a bit even as Usopp tries to take more than his fair share of the liquor. "Why, Straw Hat," Cabbage starts. Lucy doesn't let him finish. "I smell meat though. There's a banquet later, right?" You're interested in eating right now," says the director guy. He looks kind of annoyed. "Oh screw you, Straw Hat," Cabbage snaps. "I'm more experienced and more fabulous than you, and I'm over here saying I'll fly your flag." The guy who looks like he's been taking style advice from Usopp raises his spear. "Let's force her to drink it." Long Leg Guy chimes in with his own irritation. "You don't know how strong we are, you damn liberator." Zoro feels a flicker of annoyance cut through his general mirth at the situation, but it fades quickly. He doesn't like people telling his girlfriend what to do, but Lucis got it handled. Usopp clearly takes similar issue with their sudden change in tactics. "You can't talk to her like that if you're her followers." But Lucy finally snaps. "Listen, I just want to become king of the pirates," she yells, looking remarkably like a child throwing a tantrum. "I don't want to be important." The looks of utter confusion on the would-be fleet's faces is one of the best things Zoro has ever seen, seriously. "What is she talking about?" Law asks him, long-suffering confusion written on his face. He at least doesn't look as taken aback as the others. Robin and Frankie look like they're having a hard time not just bursting out in laughter as the mess breaks down further, and Zoro doesn't even complain when they come over to inspect the giant saucer of sake with interest. "Lucy, don't know what do you mean?" Rooster asks, and it's by far the most irritated Rooster has ever sounded with any given member of the Straw Hats. Lucy loops her arms around a railing on the quarter deck, and hops up on the edge, her hands on her hips and her smile beaming over the crowd below. It's weird, how fast the perception of her changes between one moment and the next. One minute she's acting like a toddler, and the next, well, she's dressed in nothing but a red tank top and denim shorts, but she looks greater, somehow, her presence larger. "I'll make sure to call you when we're in danger," Lucy promises, the words binding in a way only a person who treasures oaths so much as to live her dreams for them can achieve. "I don't have to be a great captain or anything, right? And it can work in reverse, too. We'll help you guys if you get into trouble." Lucy grins, her point made, and Zoro can't quite help the fierce, affectionate pride that wells up in him as he watches Rooster break down over the realization of who, exactly, Lucy is. Lucy wants to be free. As far as Zoro can tell, she's never wanted anything else, besides good friends to share it with. Of course, because Lucy only seems to attract strong personalities with uniformly admirable senses of honor, the idiots drink the sake anyway. Lucy looks close to throwing them all overboard in response, which would be rude even by Lucy's standards, considering using their fleet as a buffer from the admiral. Zoro walks away from the sake reluctantly and bumps her shoulder reassuringly. "Let them be," he advises. Lucy looks back at him and puts her hand on her hat. Irritation melts into uncertainty, and a more vulnerable sort of confusion than she'd previously shown. "But you didn't make them do anything. They're doing this because they want to." Zoro nods to the now sobbing Rooster. they really want to. Lucy lets out a huffed sigh, and then a small smile crosses her face. Yeah, I guess. We have a banquet prepared, the big blonde guy announces, clapping his hands eagerly. Zoro should probably learn all their names, now that they've collectively sworn fealty to his girlfriend. One that should even satisfy a pirate king. Then they bring out several piles of meat dishes, and really, they should have opened with that. Life would have been easier for all of them. Rooster's ship kind of explains a lot, to be honest. Lucy's not exactly sure how she became Rooster's, she doesn't even know if she has a corollary relationship to compare it to, but whatever it is, it's flattering. And also convenient, since Rooster's offering their ship for passage. Lucy chooses not to think about the fact that he and 6 others offered her a lot more, because it still kind of pisses her off. She pushes the whole thing aside, because it's not really something she has much control over at this point. Besides, frustrated as she might be, she's never been one to hold other people's choices against them, unless it hurts her friends. It's not long after they've settled in for the journey to Zo that Lucy notices something off about Terao. He barely speaks. Every time someone tries to draw him into the group he finds a way to slink off and be alone. It's odd, and not quite what she expected from him now that Mingo's gone. Lucy knows sometimes people need to be alone. It's why she has her special seat and Zoro has his weights and Nami her mikan. And maybe, if she thought that's what Terao needed, she'd leave him alone. But that's not what Terao needs, she knows, because Terao keeps letting himself get dragged into things without complaint, and he wouldn't be doing that if he didn't want to be around them. So that first afternoon on Rooster's ship, when she finds him staring out over the water with tension in his shoulders and a more frowny than usual frown on his face, Lucy decides to check on her friend. Terao, Lucy calls, bounding over to him and just barely managing to hit the brakes before pitching herself into the sea. Zoro would be mad at her if he had to interrupt a nap to fish her out of the water, again. Straw Hat Ya, Terao greets. He sounds a little annoyed with her sudden appearance, but Lucy isn't bothered by that. Still hungover? Lucy wrinkles her nose, annoyed, because she drank too much last night at the celebration on the big blonde guy's ship. Alcohol's supposed to be gross, not sweet, Lucy complains. That's why you're not supposed to drink the punch at parties, Straw Hat Ya. Lucy huffs, irritated. Well, did you drink the punch? I had a mug. Singular. Lucy snickers. You're a lightweight, huh? Terao turns to her a little, and Lucy is deeply gratified to see an eyebrow twitch. You shouldn't be talking, you know, he grouches, and then continues a little softer. And I'm not. I just don't get drunk. There's a heaviness to his words that sobers Lucy, just a little. A past she doesn't know, doesn't need to know. There's lots of reasons to not get drunk. Lucy rarely does herself, because she doesn't like hangovers and too much alcohol makes her tired before the party's over. Sometimes people act different when they're drunk, too, and Terao's enough of a control freak to dislike it on those grounds alone. You had fun though, right? Lucy pries. At the party, and kicking Mingo's ass. Terao gives her a look she's grown well used to, a confirmation that she was, in fact, serious about what she just said, and then disbelief, and then resignation. Or apprehension, from strangers. Yeah, fine. Whatever. There's a note in his voice that speaks of something buried though, something unsure and new. Frowning, Lucy hops up on the ship's rail and balances on her sandals, the sea at her back as she inspects Terao. Terao looks vaguely uncomfortable with her staring. After a few seconds of quiet he snaps a defensive, "What?" in her direction. Lucy squints, not answering right away. Something's weird about Terao. Something different but not bad, necessarily. Hockey whispers of relief, of uncertainty, of a stumbling climb from the depths of a cave into sunlight. It reminds her of when she fought Mingo with her hockey, of peeling back layers to chains she didn't know were there. But it's weird with Terao, different, because instead of exposing purpose and well it seems like. Oh, you finished your dream, Terao, Lucy declares excitedly, her arms pinwheeling wildly. Her feet nearly slip from the polished rail, but Lucy's always been good with balance. Terao blinks in shock at the sudden topic change, and Lucy doesn't let him regain footing before shoving a finger in his face, excited. That's why you've been so weird. Terao bats her finger away, irritated. Well, what would you do if you became Pirate King today? Lucy hums, uncertain, and then realizes it's not that complicated after all. Eat meat, probably. She shrugs. Then I'd find a new dream. She slides off the railing, her sandals clicking hard against the tarred deck. You can't be a pirate without a dream, ya know? Torao huffs, annoyed. That's so. Lucy nods, authoritative. Yup. And it's gotta be a good one. Torao looks away, his eyes casting out to sea. I don't have one. Lucy hums, a little sympathetic. Better find one soon. But Lucy can't help him with that, so she pokes him in his right bicep, right over the bandage peeking out under his sleeve. Let me see your arm. Don't touch me, Straw Hat yaw. He grouses, his left hand coming up to protect his arm defensively. Lucy feels a stab of guilt and then gets over it. Come on, let me see, she goads, making impatient grabbing motions with her hand. Why? Let me see. Will you leave me alone after that? Lucy thinks about that for a second. Nah, will you leave me alone for today? Lucy shrugs. Not if Torao needs a friend. Torao hands over his arm. She grabs him by the wrist, not at all gentle, and bends his thumb back, but not far enough to hurt. Done yet? Lucy ignores him. It works and everything, right? Does it poop? Torao looks both confused and vaguely disgusted. Why the fuck would my arm poop? I dunno. Gotta ask though. She turns his hand over and draws the arm out to the side so she can see the bandage properly. It needs changing. Chopper will want to see your arm. Torao doesn't react outwardly, but the internal howl of revulsion is clear through her haki. It's fine. I'm a doctor. I can tell. Lucy isn't sure why he's so hesitant, but she's going to have words with Torao if he thinks something's wrong with her doctor. Chopper's better. Now Torao looks a little insulted. What makes you say that? Chopper's the best. Torao lets out a soft huff of air, and Lucy thinks that might be a laugh. You're impossible. There's a pause, and Lucy guesses Torao's getting more and more uncomfortable the longer she inspects his hand. And your boyfriend's going to get jealous. Lucy isn't that concerned about Zoro getting jealous. More disappointing is the fact that, sewed on or not, Torao's hand is just a hand, and therefore isn't that interesting. Why? He's glaring. Lucy looks over her shoulder at Zoro, who's been napping on the deck in the same spot for an hour now. He is looking over at them, but he doesn't look jealous or angry or anything. Actually, he looks amused. Zoro always did have a weird appreciation for Lucy screwing with other people. That's just his face, she tells Torao, completely honest. He's going to get jealous, Torao warns, trying to yank his hand back. Lucy doesn't let him and bends his middle finger back in mild retribution. No, he's not. 'Cause I'm getting a tattoo. Torao jerks away, muffling a yelp of pain. This time she lets him. Huh. Torao should pay more attention. I'm not telling you what it is. I wasn't. Gah, you make no sense. Torao sounds frustrated and annoyed, but not uncertain anymore, which is good. Lucy shrugs. Torao just sighs. He sounds very tired, so Lucy pats his shoulder sympathetically. Hey, Torao, Lucy asks, cocking her head to the side. What's your favorite color? Torao blinks once, a little surprised, and then finally replies. Red, he admits. He sounds a bit shocked at himself. It's red. Lucy grins as widely as she can. She knew he'd come around eventually. Evening finds Lucy sitting below a figurehead of her own likeness, knees tucked close to her chest. The clouds are thick and gray, leaving the deck dark tea night. The moon is a day shy of full, and the pale light shines in vain behind the cloud cover. Nami would know what type of clouds they are. Nami can rant for hours about the formation of different cloud types, and such speeches have only gotten more frequent since her stint with the weather mages. Lucy likes listening to Nami talk about the weather and her maps and navigation. Her eyes light up and she gets really happy. Lucy always likes it when her nakama are happy. Lucy drops her forehead to her knees and wraps her arms around her legs. She's tired of having her nakama all split up like this. It feels like she's leaving them. Or like they're leaving her. Which isn't fair, but she can't quite keep the thought away when Sabo just. Her fingers leave bruises in her calves, her body taut and muscles aching. An hour ago, Lucy made her nakama tell her about Sabo. They didn't fight it or anything, were clear and concise and sympathetic about the situation and his brief appearance. Lucy pulled away not long after they finished, leaving them to the warmth of the gathering below deck in favor of the murky, dark and salt-damp air of the sea, the ocean still and devoid of relief-bringing wind. In all honesty, Lucy isn't sure how she's supposed to feel about Sabo's up and leaving again. She's never been good about this, about letting people leave without hurting and taking it personally. But she's so relieved, so terribly happy to have him alive again, even as she grieves the decade and change she missed with him, that the memory of seeing him again feels more like a fever dream than anything. He ate Ace's fruit. He protected her from Burgess. He gave Zoro the vivre card, the one he keeps folded in the wrappings of Watto's silken hilt. Usopp offered to sew it in more securely, and in a show of trust that warmed her even through the uncertain shock of her Nakama's story, Zoro let him. Lucy can't decide if she wishes he'd given her a vivre card for him or not. It would be nice to know he's alive, to know she could go help him if he gets into trouble. It would also be the worst case of déjà vu in history. A square of orange light appears on the other side of the deck as the door to the galley slides back. A familiar silhouette cuts through the light, and the deck creaks under the weight of his boots. It's Zoro, of course. Zoro's the only one who'd approach her after a conversation like that. He doesn't make any bones about his intentions, either, his gait sure as he moves over the tarred boards of Rooster's ship. He stops right in front of her, but it's so dark and the light so faint that she can't even see his face from a few feet away. She blinks at him, and then musters a weak smile. Hey. Zoro lets out a sigh, and turns to sit beside her, his movements graceless and deft. Lucy wonders if he settles on her right to give her the illusion of more privacy, placing her in his blind spot. He's close, but doesn't make any move to touch her, to pull her against his side, and Lucy can't decide if she should be grateful or faintly amused at how well he knows her, or vaguely annoyed at the same fact. In times like this, Lucy usually wants privacy, but she almost never wants to be alone. Zoro kind of solves that issue for her. The gratitude adds to the sick pit in her stomach, and she kind of wants to cry a little, but she doesn't feel the tears come. She's so unsure of what she's feeling, is the thing. There are too many things swirling in her head to settle on one, and the confusing mess only begets more frustration. She's sad and she's angry and she's annoyed, but she's also amused and relieved and so happy. Well yeah, Zoro says, sounding a bit confused, I'd assume so. It's only then Lucy realizes she said that last bit out loud. Zoro's too goddamn easy to talk to, sometimes. It's just, Lucy trembles a bit, can't quite suppress it, I miss him. There's a pang of pure, unadulterated sympathy from Zoro, something she feels through senses too keen and too raw for her head to handle at the moment. But it comes across so strong, so easy and kind, and that it sends her over the edge, and suddenly she's crying a lot. She's always been a quiet crier, which surprises everyone who knows her. It was something that freaked Ace and Sabo out a lot, actually, claiming that the only thing worse than a crybaby little sister was a crybaby little sister who cries quietly. But Lucy can't quite help it, has never really wanted to voice her pain to the world, because it feels too much like admitting defeat. There's no way Zoro doesn't know she's crying right now, there would never be a way to hide it from him, but she doesn't mind crying in front of Zoro, so it doesn't stop her from breaking down like it normally would. She wishes she knew if she's crying because she's happy, or if she's crying because she's sad. It must be a bit of both, because the more she cries the more her emotions churn, peaking between highs and lows, and the volatility of it makes her want to be sick. She feels grief for a childhood they'll never now know, renewed anxiety for family lost to the sea and waves on the wings of their dreams, and so much fury directed at the dragon that masked his life from her, that masked her and Ace from him. She feels giddy to have a brother again, thrilled to meet him on the seas as the three of them promised they would, and adoring in a way only a little sister who has spent her life chasing her older brother's backs can. She feels a profound sort of agony over the fact that Ace died thinking Sabo was dead, that he never gets to see their brother grown. There's a strange, nagging question that she's never felt the need to ask, the one that breathes, why couldn't Dragon have taken me, too? And at the same time a gratitude so crippling that Lucy could scream it from rooftops and rafters. A cry of thank you, thank you, thank you for saving him. It's a heady mix, and for the first time since the ecstasy of discovering that her long-dead brother is alive, she lets it out, the tears washing the jagged edges of emotion away like rain-coals leaves from a tree. It takes a while, but eventually it stops. The rain peters out and the land and sky and sea reach equilibrium again. When she looks up, the deck is still dark, but the moon peeks out over a break in the clouds, and a smattering of starlight spills over beside it. Beside her, Zoro is still, his breath even and his right arm behind his neck as he leans against the smooth back of the figurehead, as if bored. He can't fool her though. She can feel his attention on her, buzzing like a second skin, but not intrusive. His eye is sharp even as he doesn't look at her, glowing silver white as a moonbeam glances across his face. And Lucy feels a soft pang of regret for the loss of his left eye, because Zoro's eyes are beautiful. The loss of his eye doesn't make him less, of course. When she thinks of it, the scar makes something curl up at the base of her spine, something almost too fierce to be mere pride at her swordsman's prowess, at his strength and willingness to sacrifice for victory. Lucy lets out a slow, calming breath, and unfurls a little from the ball she squished herself into. She leans back against the figurehead, her shoulder brushing Zoro's, and stretches out her legs. She wipes the few remaining tears away with the back of her hand, and then folds her hands across her stomach, looking up at the stars seeking passage through the cloud cover. Zoro is still quiet, but he feels like a bonfire beside her, warm and essential and full of the kindness that led him to save and suffer for a little girl in a middle-of-nowhere village in East Blue and eat her dirt-packed rice ball when that same girl brought him food as thanks. Zoro has always reminded her of the sun-baked stones in the desert of Alabasta, stubborn in the face of eons of grit against their surfaces, and warm to the touch. In Marimo's, of course. He'd be furious over the comparison if she told him, but even with the scant moonlight bleaching his hair, there's an uncanny resemblance. Her lips turn up and something light and airy lifts her from stasis, the emotional change steady and minute, this time. Zoro must sense the shift, because he finally turns to look at her, an eyebrow raised in question. Lucy offers him a smile. A small one, but a smile, and adjusts her hat so it doesn't get squished behind her shoulder blade. He seemed like he cared, Zoro offers after a moment. Like he's a little unsure of sending her spiraling into another crying jag, but too honorable to withhold such vital information. The thought makes her smile a little wider, and she nods. I know. The moonlight casts heavy shadows across his face, but she sees his expression soften, and feels the warm glow of his affection, and comfort rises soft and loamy within her. They're both quiet after that, the way people sometimes are when there's nothing and yet too much to say. The clouds are clearing a little, the stars peeking out in patches between cotton like reams of vapor. Below the deck, Rooster's crew and hers are partying, passing beer back and forth and playing cards. Usopp's voice sounds a little like a harmonica, and even from here she can hear the faint tones of his voice as it rises and falls around the contours of a story. Lucy wonders, a little, what that story is. She wonders if he'll tell her later. It won't be the same, but that's alright. Usopp's tales get grander with every telling. When Ace died, there wasn't a lot I could reassure myself with, Lucy tells Zoro. It's weird how calm she feels, speaking of this. She hasn't spoken about it to anyone, yet. I did think it was nice, that they were together, in wherever, after, is. Zoro turns to her, something like compassion and pride and determination in his eyes. There's no pity though. No pity at all, and she's glad for that. Lucy's pretty sure she could never handle pity from Zoro, not for as long as she lives. Sabo said he thinks Ace jogged his memories. Zoro reminds her. He mentioned it before. He thinks Ace didn't want you to be alone. Sounds like Ace, of course. Something old and painful spikes in her chest, but the scar is calcified, even if an older one has been lanced open. What do you think? Lucy asks, leaning against him a little heavier. Zoro waits a beat before replying. I think there is no after, Zoro admits, blunt as always, and I think you're not alone. Then he looks at her, and there's a fierce intensity in his face, the kind of look that carries an oath, a promise, a vow, the kind that speaks of devotion Lucy's certain no one on this earth deserves from him. Lucy will take it though, because Lucy is selfish that way, selfish of Zoro and selfish because that look is Zoro promising and you'll never be alone. Because I'm here, and I'll always stand beside you. Lucy wants to promise him things in return, but she's already given him all she has, a place on her crew and the whole of her heart and their dreams to pursue. Only children promise to defeat the Reaper, and so she has nothing to return his devotion with but her own, Nothing but the open sea and the wind at their backs and uncertainty and mystery ahead. All of which are prizes he's already claimed. She can promise to fight harder than anyone to keep them all together, to keep him at her side, and she can promise to win. Zoro's taken that oath already too, and Lucy has already made it once, the vow to never give up. She doesn't mind making it again, and so with a soft exhale she breathes between them, me too. For a moment she thinks he's going to kiss her, because the look in his eye is like fire, makes it feel like his gaze leaves a trail across her face. But then he leans away and his face turns up, back to the sky, and he speaks again. About there being no after. Lucy blinks, almost having lost the thread of their conversation. But she soon catches up, and shoves him a little for being deliberately obtuse. No, I dunno about that. A smirk quirks at Zoro's mouth, and Lucy wishes the shadows weren't quite so thick, so she could see the dimple that sometimes shows when he's smug. What's to know? Lucy shrugs, thinking of the little mission at the base of Mount Kuvo, just a small stone hut and nothing more. The missionary who lived there ministered in Gray Terminal, gave out food and clothing and always brought tetanus shots, and he preached to those who wanted to hear as he treated and fed the poor and reasoned with gang leaders. When Lucy asked, he said he came when he heard of the fire, when he heard of what Goa had done. He claimed it was a blasphemy against God, and he hoped to reach even the hearts of the Goa nobles one day. He claimed there was a lot to know. That there was a plan for the universe and a savior and an end of days and a life after death. He claimed there was justice to be found and punishment for the wicked, and that kindness was important and that God could bring a person peace. Ace always thought he was a quack. He didn't like him, didn't like it when Lucy waved hello to him. He never explained why, but Lucy thinks it might have been because the priest always talked about respecting one's parents and Ace hated Roger. Lucy thought a lot of what he claimed was kind of weird, but she also thought he must be lonely, living in that hut all by himself. She went to see him sometimes, when Ace left, and she was lonely too. He was a nice old man, and his stories were funny, even if they were a bit weird. I don't know. I'm not that smart, Lucy tells him, shrugging. I don't know anything about stuff like that. It's nice to think people watch over us from after, but it sounds pretty boring when you get there, too. Zoro huffs a laugh. Only you would be worried about entertainment in the afterlife. Lucy grins a little. I'm not cut out for eternal choir. Lucy watches the moonlight spread across the deck as clouds shift away from its nearly full face again. Ace thought like you do. She feels Zoro turn toward her, and feels his surprise as an almost tangible wave in the air. Yeah. Lucy nods. Yeah. It's nice to talk about him, Lucy realizes. Once it would have felt like ripping stitches out of her still healing heart. Now it feels good, kind of warm. And she knows Zoro will guard the memory of her brother with jealous determination. Knows it's safe to tell him anything. Zoro is always safe. She's in that post-cry mood where everything feels raw but nothing feels untouchable, the dregs of old emotion rising up to be examined and evaluated. Thinking of Ace brings her back to Marineford, eventually, because 2 years down the line she still gets assaulted with the memories sometimes. Ice and snow stained red, gore so thick she could drown in it, blood that was not hers flaking off her skin, and burgeoning senses screaming danger from every angle because the path to her brother was woven through the blades and fists of the truly strong, the ones with their full potential unlocked. Doflamingo was at Marineford, Lucy remembers, and she feels Zoro's attention sharpen. I couldn't touch him then. Zoro doesn't say anything, just waits for her to finish, and she looks up at him with something painful in her throat as she realizes. I beat him. And I know I could have saved him now. She knew that before, of course. She knew it the day Rayleigh complimented her armament, the day he mentioned the sheer potential of her conquerors. She knew it when she defeated the beasts on the island, and she knew it that day in Sabodi when she embraced her nakama again. And yet it's different, seeing her efforts come to fruition like this. Doflamingo was an obstacle on the battlefield she didn't have to face at the time, because others occupied him on her behalf. One she couldn't have faced, one she couldn't have touched. But she beat him, not a week ago. She beat him, she beat him, she beat him. Zoro looks down at her, a little line of confusion tugging at his lips. Well, yeah? Of course you did. Lucy feels the happy tears bead at the corners of her eyes as relief and flattered, embarrassed affection fludent do it alone. Torao got a good hit. And you kept him busy. Zoro shrugs in that one-shouldered way he sometimes does when she's leaning on him, like he's worried she'll move away if he disturbs her at all, like she wouldn't just hold on tighter next time. I promised to be stronger too. There's a flash of something hot and self-directed in his face before it's smothered by brash, casual pride, and Lucy softens. She wonders if there was ever a time when she didn't understand Zoro as well as she does. She can't imagine such a period, where Zoro was nearby and yet a stranger, but it must have occurred, no matter how brief. It wasn't your fault, back then, Lucy tells him, trying to alleviate the guilt even knowing it's futile. It was, if it was anyone's, Zoro replies, his voice gruff. He's tense, too, and the rising wind makes the heaviness of his voice more painful. It wasn't, Lucy insists. She reaches over, and trails her fingers across the inside of his forearm. Gentle pressure encouraging him to relax the fist he's made. If it was anyone's, then it was mine. I punched the noble asshole. Zoro's hand loosens enough for Lucy to slot her fingers between his, her hand swallowed by his heavy knuckles and broad palm. If you hadn't, I would've, Zoro reminds her. There's a short pause, and then his voice is soft, like he can't believe he's saying this aloud. It's my job to protect the crew, and I didn't. For a bizarre second, Lucy kind of wants to punch him, but it passes quickly, to be replaced by fond affection tinged with exasperation. It's mine, too. My job to take on the biggest threat. She lets out a slow breath that catches a little on the way out, because she can remember the moment Kizaru nearly killed Zoro too well, and I didn't. Zoro's thumb caresses the back of her hand, utterly sympathetic, but not absolving. It's the truth, after all. None of us could have done it, then, Lucy admits, and it's still painful to say. Sabodi and Ace, what happened then taught me that. A lesson burned into her with shame and blood and death, with loneliness and brutal training and 1,000 nightmares, a lifetime of pain, an ache she will never be rid of, an innocence lost she thought long since gone, and faith she will never reclaim. She learned they were not ready. Yeah, Zoro agrees, but there's a note in his voice that's one step shy of pure agreement, I know. Inexplicably, Lucy thinks of a conversation with Smokey, and the idle thought that maybe her selfishness had finally pissed Zoro off for real. Zoro, Lucy hedges, unsure if she wants the answer. She hesitates, because she knows Zoro would have told her by now if he still, were you mad at me, when you figured out what I was? Zoro releases a slow breath through his nose. At first, he admits, it wasn't rational. I understood. I agreed. His head thunks against the wood at their backs. It was personal. I wanted to be with you, he's saying. I wanted to see you. I couldn't stand the idea of 2 years apart. I wanted to do something. Anything at all. Emotion wells up in Lucy, gathers somewhere in her chest so tightly it hurts. I didn't want to, Lucy promises, and he must understand because he already knows her so well. But we needed to. They'd be dead already if they hadn't. If Lucy had ignored Rayleigh that day on Amazon Lily, if she had given in to the need to see her crew, to break down with the 8 of them safely around her and grieve with Zoro at her side and healing properly under Chopper's care. I know, Zoro says, a little softer this time. There's warmth in his voice, affection and pride, and Lucy almost cries again when he squeezes her hand. Above their heads the sky is nearly clear, the moon bright enough to wash the deck in a faint glow, to reach even the 2 of them, huddled as they are in the shadows of the figurehead and the mast that looms before them as a sentinel. Below them their allies and Nakama grow rowdier, their laughter warming the ship, and around them the sea ripples gently with the clear, cool breeze that rises across the water. I haven't had a nightmare since before Dressrosa, Lucy says, suddenly realizing the bizarre truth of the statement. I don't think they'll be so bad now. Thank God the sky is clear enough to see by, because the look on Zoro's face is something Lucy wants to treasure, something that hooks her by the navel and pulls. He looks at her like she's something precious, like she's answered questions he's been asking since birth. He looks at her with so much emotion it hurts, chokes her up, and Lucy can almost feel the percussive force of his heartbeat as it whispers over and over and over again that he loves her, that he's not going anywhere, that with him she's finally found someone whose dreams will be aligned with hers no matter where their journeys take them. She knows all that. She sometimes thinks she's known it from the day they met. But sometimes she can see it in his eyes, and it takes her apart in ways she doesn't know how to deal with, in ways she'll never be accustomed to. Yeah, Zoro agrees, his voice too heavy, full of something unrelated to nightmares, like they're speaking of something else entirely. I think it's the same for me. It's moments like this that Lucy realizes there's something about Zoro that answers something in her, like a lighthouse calling to a ship, like the echo of some great, ancient secret built into their very blood, like a key and lock she never thought to rattle before Zoro. She wonders if he feels it too. Lean down for a second, Lucy orders him, a little breathless, and close your eyes. Zoro gives her a look, confused, but after a moment he complies, correctly guessing she wants access to his face. Lucy acts the moment he's in striking range and presses her lips to his cheek. He freezes in surprise at the gesture, and with something else when she moves to breathe a soft "I love you," Roronoa Zoro, in his ear, teeth tapping his golden earrings as she pulls away. The look he gives her when she pulls back, his eye gleaming silver fire and blazing, boring into her face with a carnal brand of the violent determination she's always admired, tells her in no uncertain terms that he feels it too. But tonight is not the night for that. Not with tear tracks still drying on her face and her emotions so high she can barely think. Not tonight. But soon. We could go grab a beer, maybe, Lucy offers. I bet there's plenty left. Zoro lets out a slow breath, and closes his eyes. Then he leans over until his forehead is pressed against hers. And she can feel his breath against her face, warm and vaguely alcoholic. The metallic sense of blood and steel strong with something strong and masculine and Zoro mixed between. Like this she's trapped between him and the figurehead, and it feels, oddly, like a more intimate version of a hug. In a minute, he agrees, his voice quiet and rough. He squeezes her hand once. Just a minute. Lucy feels something flutter in her stomach, and she's sure her eyes are the size of dinner plates when she whispers back a soft, "Okay." They stay until the moon sets. When the newspaper comes the next morning, it brings new bounties for the entire crew. Of course, none of them knew that until Rooster showed them the shrine in his bedroom, where he had not only the new wanted posters mounted on the wall, but also each and every one of their old ones. "Okay," Usopp said after a moment, just taking it all in. "This is a bit weird." Zoro can't help but agree. His own face stares back at him in triplicate. Lucy grins down beatifically from 5 separate locations. Around them is a bunch of paraphernalia that all looks sort of familiar but off. A ridiculously good replica of Yubashiri sits in an honored place above the bed, with a frayed straw hat hanging below it. There are little figures of various people they've met, like Vivi and Kuru, and the dude on Jaya who told them about the treasure, and the entire cadre of galley law. A picture of Kami and Papagu and Haikop rests on a big chest shaped like a ram's head, and nearby is a picture of the destroyed human shop where Kami was nearly sold and Hachi nearly killed. It's like someone tried to cram the entire history of the crew into one room, and it's just a little disconcerting, considering how much information this guy has clearly uncovered. "I dunno, it's kind of cool," Frankie says, picking up the iceberg figurine. "Did you have to clear out a bunch of storage areas to give us all rooms? It is kind of cramped in here." And Rooster's face goes a bit pink at the statement. "Well." Robin looks around with a slightly wary look in her eye, but then relaxes when she apparently doesn't find anything to worry over, and plucks a purple hat off a stand, admiring it. Zoro's just glad the guy didn't collect anything relating to Marineford or Impel Down. Lucy, of course, is curious about the whole thing. She keeps looking at the shrine to Nami's Klimattact, where Rooster's collected a replica of every model, so far as Zoro can tell. "I feel like we should be getting a cut of the profits for this merch," Usopp admits, looking a little overwhelmed with his hands on his hips. Then he grimaces. "I'm starting to sound like Nami. Ordinarily we would be legally entitled to a percentage of the earnings, since they're using our names and faces," Frankie starts, posing on the other side of the room with a cardboard cut out of himself. Zoro kind of forgot what Frankie used to look like. Weird. Pirate merch is a ludicrously big industry. "It's very lucrative for the sellers," Robin chimes in, donning the purple cowboy hat again. She somehow doesn't look like an idiot. The trade laws preclude people with bounties on their heads from earning money legally, and lose all copyright and identity protections normally afforded to citizens. Usopp wrinkles his nose. "That sounds shady." "Yes," Robin agrees easily, a terrifying smile on her face. It's times like these where Zoro remembers she used to kill for money. Oh hey, we got bigger bounties, Lucy realizes, bounding over to the wall where their newest wanted posters hang proudly. Yes, Lucy Dono, Rooster exclaims, I wanted to show you, even the members of your crew that you sent ahead have had their bounties raised. Cool, Lucy chirps, peering at all the updated photos. The others come around to inspect them as well, curiosity getting the better of them all. Zoro follows suit. A few strides and he's across the room, standing next to Lucy, who has a fist over her mouth to cover up the giggles she's trying to desperately suppress. What's funny, he asks, ducking easily under Frankie's arm as the cyborg takes a good look at his own photo. Lucy hiccups a little, and points to his own picture, you look so annoyed. Zoro squints. He does look kind of peeved. There's a few flecks of blood on his face but there aren't any wounds in sight, unlike his previous one. And he doesn't look beat to hell. They got a good image of the scar, too, so he won't be able to use the missing eye to fly under the radar, now. He looks angry, Lucy, Usopp complains. I bet Sanji's off camera. Yeah, totally, that seems likely. Zoro rolls his eyes at his nakama, and promptly ignores them. Nami is probably going to be upset about the new picture, having fallen for the same trick twice. Zoro has no sympathy, because she can't have that many people coming up to her and asking for photographs. Robin's looks as mysterious as her previous one, but her hair is pulled back. They straight up used a photo of General Frankie instead of the guy's actual face, and Usopp looks nearly dead in his. The Love Cook and Brook both got actual photos of themselves, although Curly Brow has a stupid expression on his face that probably means it was taken back on Fishman Island. Chopper's bounty doubled, but that didn't say much considering it was only 50 berry before, and Lucy. Lucy looks older in this photo. He's grown used to the gleeful expression of mischief from her old posters. The new one doesn't look that different, but it is more mature, somehow. There's something adult in her face that wasn't there before, and seeing the two pictures compared side by side only emphasizes how much she's changed. How much they've all changed, really. Why does Sanji's poster say, only alive? Usopp asks suddenly, and Zoro turns his attention to the poster in question. Huh. Weird. Lucy echoes the sentiment. That's weird. Then she points wildly, and his bounty went up a lot too. Zoro checks it, and yeah, it did go up a lot considering where it was after Eni's lobby. Still not as much as me, though, he adds, smug. Or me, Usopp laments. The sniper looks like he's going to be sick. It's okay, Usopp, Lucy cheers, it just means you're cool. Usopp does not look very cheered by this, and Zoro can't quite help quirking a grin when Robin and Frankie laugh and Lucy just looks on, mildly confused. Zoro is careful when he twists open the hatch to the deck. He normally doesn't give much of a damn about making noise, but everyone on board is pretty tired due to a sudden storm that passed through earlier, and Zoro's not an asshole, usually. Thankfully, the hatch opens with barely a creak, the hinges well oiled and the metal maintained. His and Usopp's room on the ship is a converted storage area, just barely big enough for the two of them to have cots laid side by side and about 6 inches to walk between. Frankie has his own storage compartment below the deck, because his sheer width makes sharing with anyone an impossibility. Robin and Law and the samurai all found bunks in the Bardo Club's regular barracks, and Lucy was afforded an actual bed in a room to herself, meant for important guests on the ship. Which, for Rooster, Zoro thinks as he hauls himself silently out of the little cabin, there's probably no guest on the planet more important to him than Lucy. The iron hatch drops down softly, and Zoro rocks back on his heels, taking a deep breath in the salt-soaked air. The water is still and quiet, the earlier storm leaving no trace of its presence in the waves. For once, dire weather does not bead and gather in the distance, and so there is nothing but the sea kissing the star-studded horizon in every direction. The sky this night is especially clear, like the furthest reaches of the universe. A realm known only to the gods and creatures not bound by the ties of feet to earth and ships. Could be grasped if one were to simply reach out. The heavens look like the diamond-crusted bodice of noblewoman, the great arc of pale nebulae a sash across the fabric, and amid it all, the full moon makes its slow way across the expanse. He heard once that some of the stars are so far away, They still make light even though they died before the earth began, before water filled the blues and the continent cooled. Zoro wonders how many stars above him are dead, and if they obscure other, smaller stars still living. It's a good night to practice his kendo. He hasn't gotten the chance since Dressrosa, with the excitement of their escape and his wounds still healing. Meditation and rest and help from Law has addressed the latter issue, and with the island 2 days behind them, the former is no longer a concern. Zoro drops easily into a seiza and withdraws Wado, balancing the katana across his palms. Silver metal glows softly in the starlight, and the edge of the blade is millimeters from biting flesh. The white satin stark against the dark of the night and a high, clear tone rings present and not from the guard. It reminds him, inexplicably, of the last time he fought Kuina, when Wado was nearly as long as both of them. A deep breath. The silent draw of Kitetsu, and a sweep up into the first position. He circles low, blades locked in steady form, and he takes Wado between his teeth. In the same moment he draws Shisui, the black blade a low hum, a yawning void fit to match the fire of its partners. When he was a child, he practiced the basic forms day in, day out, until his hands and feet bled and his muscles burd not hold him up as he heaved and tottered through the motions. As he grew he adapted the forms to suit his developing style, changed positions and motions and sequences until he had a kata repertoire all his own, suited to 3 blades rather than 1, and a physique that could handle more demanding movements. It has been years since he practiced the original forms, but the endless repetitions he did as a child have burned them into sinew and bone, and it is the originals he performs now. Something about the echoing dance of the stars and the shimmering of moonlight against the sea begs for tribute to the past, an honoring of ancestors he has and will never know, of those who came before, an offering to the things as timeless and ancient as the stars themselves. The moves come slow at first, his body unused to the old motions, and his careful efforts to keep the boards beneath his boots from creaking make some positions awkward. But by the 3rd repetition, muscle memory kicks in, and then Zoro is free. He closes his eyes, lets his senses range out and deep, until he is the soft groan of wood as the ship bobs gently in still water, until he is the infinite droplets of the sea, the salt that cakes the hull and froths the waves. He is the quiet ripple of the red and green flag, the laughing starlight, the stars themselves who beg eternal curiosity from beings that will never reach their ethereal plane. It is a moving meditation, the steps to the kata ingrained in him, though dredged up from the fog of long-buried memory. Zoro's blades wail in harmony, the edges carving the very air, the makers of truth and gifters of either death or life, depending on his inclinations. Every motion sinks him deeper into the orchestra of the turning earth, the restless currents of the sea, the eternal sameness and ceaseless change of the sky above, and the crystalline ring of the heavens. It is an homage, a tribute, and the universe itself seems to welcome it. These katas are almost like a dance, a deadly, partner-less dance. In them there is motion and exertion and fierce, fatal beauty as he practices parting bone from marrow and severing heads from shoulders and the art of sliding a blade between vertebrae to paralyze and agonize at once. Every step brings his mind farther from the ship and waves and deeper into the motion of celestial bodies and the clean splatter of blood against a concrete wall, until it's like his breath is synchronized with the beating heart of the universe itself. This far into the practice he is both alone and infinite, internally focused in the most outward way possible. And then it comes grinding to a halt. At first Zoro doesn't even realize what's happened. Kitetsu just shudders against an implacable resistance, and when Zoro opens his eyes it's Lucy, in nothing but a pair of cotton shorts and a tank top that doesn't reach her navel, and grinning at him with fire and starlight in her eyes. Her forearm is raised, shining black with haki, and Kitetsu's razor edge is caught against the block. "Hey, Zoro," Lucy asks, and her voice is quiet, but her face is sharp with something heavy enough to make heat curl up his spine and ancient enough to answer the stars themselves. "Want to spar?" Zoro, still a little disoriented from the strange sensation that he is something too large and boundless for the meager body he's suddenly found himself constrained within, just replies dumbly, "I'm training." Lucy does not look deterred, and Zoro finds himself deflecting a punch to his spleen on reflex. Lucy's bare feet dancing back out of range just as quickly. "Train with me," she whines, but something serious shadows her eyes when she adds, "You were too far away before." Zoro isn't entirely sure what she means, but thinks of how he didn't notice her arrival, of the strange, singular connection to the universe's grand march, and thinks maybe she has a point. Okay, he agrees, and Lucy beams. Wisps of hair framing her grin messily, and something old in Zoro once. First to draw blood? First to win, Lucy corrects. Well yeah, that's what I'm trying to. But Zoro doesn't get the chance to finish the thought, because Lucy ducks, spins, and a heel snaps out at Zoro's knees. Lucy's grin is broad and fierce, and Zoro feels something in him rise up and answer, and so the game is on. Immediately the spar is a brutal, wild thing. An instant melee of motion faster than eyes can follow, in an onslaught of blades and fists meeting over and over as the ship itself bobs from the sheer force of their occasional impacts. They are not gentle, could not offer each other anything less than their best if the stars fell from the sky or the sea swallowed them whole, as anything else would be an insult between them. It is exhilarating to meet an opponent who offers a challenge, who fights with such abandon. There is an unspoken agreement, a pact to refrain from using any of their more advanced moves, the ones they use to level cities and bring down gods. It is a spar in the most original of terms, based in good faith and skill, just fists against swords and the occasional use of haki, special attacks tabled for when they have more room, for when fun and testing their limits is not the clear goal. Lucy is agile, but Zoro is persistent, and every time she dodges one of his blades he counters with another. Every missed opportunity is met with a glint of challenge in their smiles, and every hit is met with laughter or a breathless "do it again." They do not shy away from force, intent upon displaying all their prowess to one another. They litter bruises and shallow cuts across each other's bodies, and take joy in the display of strength, of an opponent evenly matched. There is a current that runs deep between them, something old and glowing with the same eternal pulse as the stars and the sea itself. It is fed by want, awe, the desire to win. It takes trust to do this kind of sparring, unfathomable, irrational trust. But Zoro does not have it in him to doubt her. The spar is almost like a dance, like something from the past, done around a fire with 100 kin to clap and stomp in time with drums and feet. They are partners in this spar as much as opponents, and Zoro would wonder who is leading, but he is far past asking such pointless trivialities. Lucy throws her right fist at Zoro's head, and Zoro ducks easily out of the way, but slams her arm right above the elbow with Shisui's hilt, and rushes forward to take advantage of the opening. But Lucy is a rush of kinetic energy, as comfortable riding wind is strolling along the coast, and sways out of his attack with the motion of her arm. She rises behind him by kicking off a crate, manic glee in her face as she comes at him with haki gleaming off her skin. She manages to punch him in the nose, still better than letting her punch him in the teeth, where his jaw would probably fracture around Wato's hilt. And there's a beat where Zoro checks for fractures, not broken, just bleeding a lot, where he and Lucy just stare at one another, breathing heavily, and Zoro's sure his eyes are just as wide as hers. He wonders if his want is just as plain to her as hers is to him. "You looked really good earlier," Lucy tells him as he presses blunt fingers to cartilage. He meets her gaze, and feels something old and predatory rising up to match the same thing in her. And Lucy must sense it because she continues, encouraged. And it was pretty, but it didn't look like it was meant to be done alone. Which is both true and not, of course. The katas themselves are a solitary practice, but kendo is meant to be used, to be practiced against and in tandem with others. Sparring's fun, he agrees, and he's sure his smile looks truly terrible with the blood smeared across his face and the katana in his mouth. But Lucy's eyes flash with that same heavy thing, which is this time something close to a demand, and Zoro flies forward in answer. It continues from there, the two of them inextricably locked together in a dance both deadly and ruthlessly controlled, swords flashing in the moonlight bright and tinkling across the water. They spar until they are both exhausted, until their bodies shake, and Zoro feels the burn of muscles that haven't been properly exerted in a week, feels the heavy rise and fall of his chest as he finally traps Lucy against the rail of the ship, her back to the water, and three of his blades paused a few inches from her heart, just shy of her heaving chest, and her sweat-soaked skin to match his own, glistening even in the moonlight. Of course, Zoro doesn't doubt her ability to get out of it, if she wanted to. She's too fast to really be pinned, too agile to be caught with so many exit strategies available. But something shimmers in the air, the heaviness between them morphing into want and soon to need, and somehow Zoro knows the spar is over when he looks in Lucy's eyes and sees nothing there but frank desire strong enough to match his own. This is only confirmed when Lucy reaches out, heedless of the blades still poised at her breast, and holds her palm out expectantly below Watto's hilt. If it were anyone else, he would shove the blades into her heart, would snarl in warning or cut the hand off. But it's Lucy, and Lucy is Lucy, and so he gives her a subtle nod, and she reaches out to take the blade from between his teeth. Her fingers brush the skin around his mouth and leaving hot trails in their wake. Watto looks strange in Lucy's hand, her fingers far more delicate than his for all that her knuckles are bloodied and bruised from the spar. But he finds no protest from any of his blades, indeed no sound at all. Lucy takes a step forward, closer to Zoro, and he is forced to react quickly in order to prevent her from impaling herself on Kitetsu and Shisui, narrowing the angle of the blades, widening his arms. Something keeps the blades aloft, a certainty that simple acquiescence, that surrender, is not what either of them want. Lucy's eyes are locked with Zoro's, and she carefully, in an unpracticed but traditionally correct motion, slides Watto home in the pearlescent sheath. She reaches for Kitetsu's hilt next, her fingers gentle as they slowly pry his own free from the hilt. Zoro only resists as long as he does because the heat that lingers on his skin from brushing hers burns higher and higher with every second, that heavy current between them deepening and making itself undeniable and known. It only seems emphasized in the sudden quiet, the only sounds the soft rock of the ship in the waves, and their heavy breathing, which Zoro knows is not just from the exertion of the spar anymore. Kitetsu slides home easily, and Zoro wonders if Lucy notices that his lips follows the path of hers as she turns to Shisui next, their bodies nearly flush with one blade between them. It feels, strangely, too close, too intimate, and yet like there is an infinity between them. Her fingers are warm as they cover his, and this time she does not push him away. Instead she helps his hand along, guides the whole blade down to its sheath with his fingers still wrapped around the ebony hilt. Their eyes still locked together, and it takes a second for Zoro to realize they're close enough that their breaths mix and the heat from her skin is palpable. The pads of her fingers linger on the back of his hand, but he's not fast enough to catch her as she pulls her hand away, and his head is too addled to notice the glint of mischief in her eyes as she takes a step back. Zoro follows, his step matching hers, helplessly tugged along by something too powerful to name, something dark and intrinsic to human experience and tonight commanded entirely by the girl before him. There are maybe 6 inches between them, and with one more half-step backward, Lucy's hips hit the railing, her hands spread wide to grip the wood and lean back almost challengingly. Zoro does not reach out and pull her flush to him the way he aches to, because something about the electricity that saturates the air around them makes him think of the spar, about how contact had to be done with the utmost care. That old and predatory thing from before guides him as he lurches forward and grips the railing on either side of her hips, trapping her in place and leveling their eyes. He hears Lucy's breath catch, sees her pupils dilate further, and feels something equal rise in him, more demanding than before. The scent of her is too close, too present. Salt from her sweat and sharp, woody anise and seawater and sunlight, and the familiarity makes him ache. The moon is full and halos Lucy's head, and the cloud of stardust and genesis that halves the sky is fading as the night passes the midpoint to morning. The black of the sky is met by the lacquered sea, so still it should be glass even as the luminary clock above offers an unearthly glow to the water. She looks fey, nymph-like, as if she belongs among the stars that laugh their gentle, irreverent song as they dance along in the absolute march of time. Zoro wonders if he and Lucy will be like the dead stars above them, if they will still shine into eternity even after they're gone. He likes to think so. He knows Lucy will. They still breathe too heavily, anticipation making their blood demand more air, and they are close, so close that the magnetic pull that begs him to touch is powerful enough to overwhelm him. And Lucy, too, it seems, because her eyes are almost swallowed by her pupils when she arcs chin down in offering and she whispers his name, so quiet he barely hears even this close. Zoro, she whispers again, and then continues, demanding, Zoro, kiss me. And then Zoro understands. The game is still on, still thrumming between them, and now it is as it has always been. A question of who will admit their needs first, who will be the first to surrender. And Zoro is willing to play, has always been bored by things that happen easily, and so leans into her slowly, refusing to touch her yet, but unable to ignore such a request. His lips meet hers, and it is a chaste thing, or would be if not for the fire in his body. The trembling restraint they both exert to keep from pulling together in a more desperate way. He kisses her softly, just a barely there press of their lips, but the want is like electricity and is quickly turning to need, and so it takes a terrible amount of control to pull back once again. The loss of contact feeling as profound as the halving of his very soul. He can only bring himself to back off a few centimeters, and Lucy makes a noise of protest that goes straight to his core, that he would echo if he wasn't so focused on teasing this out as long as possible, if he wasn't so distracted by the fact that Lucy's eyes are still closed and that her lips followed his. Zoro, she complains, and he doesn't look away from her face, but he still feels her left hand release the railing and then return, and his own grip on the polished wood turns white-knuckled as he fights for his restraint. He leans in again, his nose pressing into the flesh beneath her cheekbone as he seals his mouth to hers, just a little firmer and longer than before, a promise and a plea at once, though Zoro is not entirely sure what for. Electricity burns him, need present and plain and mutual, and only his competitive nature keeps him from indulging in the feeling, in feeding the heat that pools in his stomach and arcs up his spine until only embers remain. He pulls back once more, but can't bring himself to stop touching her, his nose and forehead pressed into hers, desperate, and this time it is him that keeps his eyes closed, because he knows if he looked at her he would be gone. But Lucy, it seems, is already there. Her left hand snakes out, fisting in the front of Zoro's shirt with the sort of desperation that sets Zoro's blood to fire, and a whine in her throat to match. And then Lucy's body is pressed against his, her hips and chest flush with him as she shoves her tongue into his mouth and wraps her arms around his neck. Zoro has never been able to deny Lucy easily, and he doesn't want to now. He responds to her boldness by matching it with his own, restraint gone, and SMWDs her against the rail, feels her gasp into his mouth when his hips pin her against the ship, but it is met with nothing but eager approval as she moves to wrap a leg around his waist and arcs into him suggestively enough that Zoro's hands fist in the cotton of her tank top, desperate and wanting. He wonders, in the tiny portion of his brain not consumed with Lucy and seeking out the warmth in her that calls to him, if this all means he won. It feels different, this time, from similar occasions before. The desperate edge to their hands and mouths and the single-minded way in which they pursue each other does not feel motivated by fear of separation. She did not appear here with nightmares in her eyes, and he was not practicing to lay his demons to rest. Tonight their needs feel untainted by fear and anxiety and doubt. Instead there is impulse and long-banked desire and simple joy at receiving and giving to each other. Above them, the laughing heavens spin on into eternity, and all around them the sea that stretches into its own infinity. But nothing seems truer or more important than the heat of their bodies and the need to be close and close and closer. Lucy seems to agree because when she pulls back for air and guides his mouth to her throat like she can't bear even that small loss of contact, she whimpers his name and then, "We should, my room." Maybe once upon a time he would have shied away, would have doubted, but he can't when Lucy holds him like she's going to fly apart if she lets go, and he can only feel affection and want and a reciprocal need to touch blazing in his mind. So he nods, mouth still latched to Lucy's neck as he lifts her up and starts to stumble across the deck, his coordination a mess when her teeth are sinking into the juncture of his neck and shoulder hard enough to draw blood, and decides that maybe, for at least one night, there are no bad stars. Lucy is slow to wake. Her body feels heavy from sleep, and her head quiet. The sheets are soft, tucked up to her chin, and her skin soaks up the ambient warmth. The effervescent beams of morning sunlight graze her eyelids, and the waves rolled gently against the ship's hull outside the room. It's the scent that truly wakes her though. Warm and masculine and familiar. That, and the weight of a muscular arm slung across her waist. The dip in the bed that speaks of another body beside her own. Lucy pries her eyelids open, fighting against the sleep gunk, and finds herself face to face with a sleeping Zoro. It's probably not a vision of Zoro at his most attractive. His hair is a mess, his face is smushed against the pillow, and he's snoring softly. Flakes of dried blood still cling to his face in places from their sparring. His mouth's hanging open, and Lucy's pretty sure she sees drool on his chin. But something about it, something about the lax, placid expression and the implicit trust involved in falling asleep beside someone and the way Zoro looks strangely vulnerable, speaks of intimacy, and it catches Lucy hard in the chest. It's not the first time she's seen Zoro asleep, of course, not the first time she's woken up beside him, even. It feels new today though, feels new and good. It's probably the bed, Lucy reasons, still a little sleep drunk and deliriously admiring the sight before her. Mattresses are good. After a moment she rolls to her back, far too awake to sleep and too tempted to wake Zoro to keep staring at him. A quick, customary check on the ship's occupants assures that everyone is safe and accounted for. An action not really born of fear or concern, for once, but affection and curiosity. They're fine, all of them. Lucy sinks just a bit deeper into the mattress. The room itself is quite small, barely larger than a broom closet. So small the door doesn't open all the way, blocked by the cot. But it's nice, with the dark wooden panels and the serviceable window that lets in just the right amount of sunlight, and reveals the sea spread out below. It smells like Zoro now, which is nice. Lucy kind of hated sleeping alone. As she stares at the oaken ceiling, Zoro's hand settles on the curve of her waist, his thumb grazing the edge of her worst scar. Absently, she covers his hand with hers. The thin line of the old scar on her palm faded with time but still raised enough to drag a little against the back of his fingers. Zoro has mentioned a couple times that his katana have sounds, that they sort of speak to him in music and thought. He said it's hard to explain, because katana don't speak the way people do, and that he's not a fucking poet. Or whatever Usopp is. Lucy has always wondered if Kitetsu told him about how she got the scar. She's never explained it to anyone, but Zoro sometimes presses her palm to his lips with a weight that suggests he knows the story behind it, like he's saying I love you the way he probably never will aloud. Her knuckles are bruised and the skin a bit broken. Her devil fruit will heal it within the day, along with the collection of cuts and bruises from the spar, but the damage is minimal and well worth a fight like that, and for what came after. Lucy flushes a little, feeling a bit giggly and squirmy. She suddenly doesn't care if Zoro needs to sleep. She wants him to be awake, so they can maybe try a repeat performance before breakfast. But she refrains, still kind of enjoying the intimacy of waking up next to him like this. And besides, Zoro almost never looks this relaxed. He's always on alert, even in sleep, and he's usually a terribly light sleeper. He always wakes a few seconds after she does. So she squashes the urge to wake him, but she does indulge in the desire to touch him. Zoro has a lot of scars. She's noticed it before, obviously, because it's hard not to notice when one's boyfriend constantly walks around half naked. The big ones were obvious. The web of tiny nicks and cuts, most healed improperly, is a more complex thing that spans Zoro's body like constellations and framed the more terrible things that have tried to kill him in the past, from the loss of his eye to the scar Mihawk marked him with, to the thick ropes across both his ankles from Little Garden, when Zoro tried to cut his own limbs off. There's a mess of tangled scar tissue on his lower belly too. She can't see it now because the sheets are twisted around Zoro's waist, but she saw the scars last night. They're usually covered by his haramaki, and Lucy knows the pale scars are from Thriller bark, because the memory of Chopper treating them every day for weeks is burned deep into her mind. They're hard to miss, when they stand out in such sharp relief from his bronze skin, but it's not something she wants to dwell on at the moment. She uses her right hand to trace along the diagonal slash across his chest. Lucy thinks of Zoro's dream, of how such a dream is only right for someone as amazing and determined as he is. She is everentially gentle as she traces the raised edge of the scar. It is older now, long since healed, and the stitches that once held the parted skin together are gone, along with the angry red color. It's still a terrible thing, pale and stark against bronze skin, but it isn't as angry now as it was before, and the broken tissue has relaxed and softened just a bit. But even her light touch is enough to disturb Zoro's sleep, and Lucy is gifted the rare sight of watching Zoro wake up as his hand squeezes her hip, unconscious. His eyebrows pinch together, the left one a little sluggish due to the severed muscle there. His mouth snaps shut, the corners twitching and atoms apple bobbing as he swallows. His right eye creaks open, gunmetal gray peeking out from beneath copper eyelids, and Lucy grins in helpless affection as she sees the bleary, sleep-driven confusion there. Lucy rolls onto her side, her face a few inches from his, and she's sure her morning breath is awful, but it's not like she cares. Hey. Zoro still doesn't seem fully awake, But he also seems reluctant to let go of her, and the hand on her hip finds the one she rested on top of it, their fingers twining together easily. After all they've done and all they've been through, Lucy probably shouldn't be getting so happy over how well their hands fit together anymore, but, well, their hands fit really well together. Still dreamin', Zoro mumbles, his head curving closer to hers and his eye drooping closed. Lucy grins wide because she is never going to let him live that down. She can't let the rest of their nakama find out though, because they'll tease him mercilessly over it in about 2 seconds flat, and then he won't get all embarrassed anymore when she teases him about it, which would be a damn shame. Not a dream, she promises. Lucy uses her free hand to tap gently on the broken skin between his neck and shoulder, a reminder she's a bit too proud of having left behind. Zoro's eye flies open in surprise, and he's a bit more awake when he looks at her this time. "Oh," he says eloquently. Lucy just grins wider, and Zoro sighs, but he doesn't seem that mad, the easy warmth of the morning sapping irritation too quickly to form. "You woke me up," he accuses, but again, he doesn't sound that upset about it. "Sorry," Lucy says, not quite meaning it. "I like waking up next to you." Zoro's gaze grows a shade heavier, and he tugs on Lucy's hips, managing to pull them couple inches closer. He gives a low hum of approval when their pelvises press close, and Lucy leans into him a little further at the sound. "You're thinking about something." It's not quite a question, more of an easy, open-ended observation, and it takes her a second to follow his thought. But when she does, she lets her fingers trail across his chest again, just memorizing the ridges and valleys of the old scar tissue. "Just that we match." Zoro hums quietly, thoughtful. He slides their hands up a few inches, and his thumb brushes the skin there, grazing the bottom point of the star-shaped scar. The pad of his finger is a B scar, and fits inside the corner spanning over her ribs. He was thorough in his exploration last night, but Lucy figures he has the same urge to touch and memorize that she does, and she isn't surprised when his fingers trace the ridges and depression and knots of gnarled, shiny skin over and over again. His free hand appears from under the pillows to play with Lucy's hair and brush it away from her face, exposing the old scar under her eye to daylight. It's times like these where Lucy wonders why she ever worried Zoro would be repulsed by her scars. Wonders why it even crossed her mind. "I guess," Zoro mutters finally. He doesn't sound too interested, or like he's thought about it much. Lucy would not be surprised if she's thought more about Zoro's scars than he has. His face is a couple inches away, and despite his morning breath, Lucy really wants to kiss him. So she does, leaning forward a little, and presses her lips to the skin right under his left eye, at the bottom edge of the scar that took it. He goes still at the gesture, and when she pulls back, he looks at her like. Well, honestly, Lucy's never been able to figure it out. He wasn't so open about it before Sabaody, but she still saw it from time to time, on occasions where he looked like he was about to swear fealty again, or like she's done something strange and he's realizing he likes it. She's never been sure, never been able to quite understand. All she knows is that it makes her feel like she can do anything, more than she already does. And at the same time, like she's very, very small, not quite worthy. It's a bit dangerous, that look, because it makes Lucy want to do things. Risky, impulsive things that would make her nakama either sigh or rue ever crossing paths with her or both. She likes it though. She likes it a lot. "Sorry about the bite marks," she amends, noticing another one a few inches from the first. She honestly doesn't remember that one, but she's not exactly shocked. Fine," Zoro waves, and his face is smug when he lightly drags his knuckles over the line of her neck and shoulder, her skin shivering a little, sensitive to touch. She likes this, with his arm resting above their heads on the pillow and his other hand at her waist. It makes her feel surrounded in the best way possible. "I got you pretty good too." So that's why her neck feels a little stiff. "At least your shirt will cover yours," she complains. Her neck probably looks like an octopus tried to maul it, given the way it feels. Which, actually, is kind of appropriate considering the way people describe Zoro in a fight. Not her, of course, because Zoro in a decent fight is one of the coolest, most beautiful, and erotic things Lucy has ever witnessed in this life, but other people have said as much. "You bit me," Zoro retorts. "My own girlfriend, causing injury," he mocks. She'd probably play along, point out that actually, it was 3 times, because she distinctly remembers biting in a much less visible place too. But Lucy catches something she hadn't before, and realizes she's been not realizing it for a while. "You called me your girlfriend," she breathes, something happy and fluttery playing in her chest. "You've been calling me your girlfriend." Zoro blinks, like he didn't realize that himself. The absent caress of his thumb against her ribcage stops in his surprise. "I didn't notice." There's a flash of something in his face that's young, a thing she rarely sees. It reminds her almost painfully of the lazy days in the dinghy, when they were both less experienced and when they'd seen nothing of the world. Lucy wouldn't go back if she had the choice, wouldn't change her swordsman for anything, but there's something almost boyish and charming about him this morning. Something so utterly relaxed and comfortable even in the midst of his awkward admission that it takes Lucy's breath away. Lucy grins so hard her cheeks hurt, and she leans in to kiss him properly this time. It's a brief thing. So quick Zoro almost doesn't recover his faculties quickly enough to respond, but she tries to pour her passion and affection into the gesture anyway. "I like it," she reassures when she pulls back a little, "and I've been doing the same." "That's, good." He looks a little flustered, which is rare and, really, more than Lucy's poor heart can take. "I love you," she tells him. She's told him a lot, but sometimes she feels it so strongly it just kind of bursts out. His face goes soft at the words. His eye turns mercury silver, like it does when he's really, really happy. Zoro's hand squeezes hers. Me, too." Lucy blinks at him, once. Twice. Zoro's face flushes darker than before. Lucy can't help it. She snickers, then outright laughs, and then curls helplessly into his chest, burying all her laughter into the space at the base of his throat and snaking her right arm under him to clutch at his back helplessly. "It's not that funny," Zoro complains, sounding a little miffed. Lucy just slings a leg over his hip, so he can't escape. Not that he seems very interested in doing so, but better safe than sorry. It is," Lucy wheezes, "all that time agonizing over it, and you just, me too," she echoes lowly, trying to copy his tone and cadence, and then cackles at her own joke when she's pretty damn successful. "Oh ha, Zoro returns. He rolls them over, so he's hovering over Lucy as she giggles helplessly on her back beneath him. The way their pelvises slide together distracts her just a bit, and her breath catches on the laughter. Zoro smirks like he meant to do that. "Asshole." She draws him down like she means to kiss him properly, and then ducks to graze the stubble on the underside of his jaw at the last moment. It's more playful than anything, like blowing a bubble into his skin, and Zoro huffs above her, caught between annoyance and amusement. He gets her back though because he shifts, draws their joined hands up her side, and then it's near impossible to ignore their distinct lack of clothes and the possibilities that offers. The realization shoots something electric and good up her spine, and suddenly she's totally ready to follow the look Zoro's giving her into more interesting activities. "Do you think they'll mind if we're late to breakfast?" she asks, hitching both legs a little higher on his waist and clutches him a little closer when they lock together properly. It kills her to skip a meal, but Zoro, naked, in bed with her, she has her priorities in order. Zoro's eye is a bit darker when he replies, and Lucy figures he's on the same page. They'll get over it. "They might think you've done something to me," she teases, enjoying the light brush of his lips against the sensitive spot beneath her ear. "And we wouldn't want that." "Yeah we would," Zoro counters, his lips grazing the bruises on her neck. "That's what these are for." Lucy snorts, amused, because she doesn't really mind the marks. After all, she did the same and worse to him. But then he pulls back and Lucy pouts up at him, on the verge of complaining. But then he draws her left palm up to his lips and kisses the scar there, holding her gaze all the while. It's never fair when Zoro does this. This is one of those moments Lucy thinks she could read Zoro's soul in his eyes, see the trust and loyalty and love and mess of protective instincts and impulsivity that makes her swordsman, and it always catches her unprepared. It's an "I love you" and it's an "I'll follow you anywhere, Captain," and a "You'll never be alone again, I promise." With anyone else it would scare her. It does scare her, a little, how determined Zoro is to stand with her. But she believes him. She trusts him to stay, and she's known he loves her in one way or another since he raised his blade to the cloudless sky and called her Pirate King. She tangles her fingers in his hair, and pulls him down and into her, trying to inject as much affection and passion and desire into the kiss as she can. Zoro responds enthusiastically. And it's sloppy and messy, but it's good too. Warm and safe and bit desperate. It's decided. Lucy wants to wake up next to Zoro every day, if she can swing it. In a bed, if possible. It's clearly the only way to do this relationship thing properly. The next few days pass in a blur. The Straw Hats are more or less banned from working on the Bardo Club ship, which leaves them all with a lot of free time, even with his training. It's a very pleasant, haze-filled blur, but a blur nonetheless. He spends it exploring Lucy in just about the only way he hadn't previously, with the two of them ducking off to Lucy's quarters whenever they get the chance, or various alcoves around the ship if they don't make it that far. This all takes place in endless folds of time between naps on sunlit decks and meals where he mostly fails in his attempts to ignore his Nakama's constant and very blunt innuendos. In Zoro's defense, there are only so many times he can be expected to hear Frankie wonder aloud about what Lucy thinks of his sword before he snaps. Zoro refuses to apologize. It's not like Frankie can't replace his hand or anything. Besides, Law reattached it without much fuss. Frankie was nothing to Rooster though, because once that guy figured out what they were up to, he started asking questions. Many questions. Frankly, Zoro could have lived without suffering an interrogation over whether he was treating Lucy Dono with the respect she deserved, only to have that speech immediately followed by Rooster prostrating himself and offering self-flagellation in pursuit of redemption. His Nakama got a kick out of it. Lucy and Usopp in particular laughed their asses off. Zoro kicked Rooster off the ship, mostly to make him shut up. He didn't actually realize the guy was a devil fruit user, but his crew fished him out quickly enough. It's not like he drowned. The others' apparent interest in their relationship probably isn't helped by how clingy they've been. They take any excuse to touch each other, clasping hands under tables at dinner and casual brushes that were commonplace before but now draw his attention in a whole new way, his brain all too aware of new possibilities. The newfound clinginess kind of reminds him of the time right after they got together, before Punk Hazard and even Dressrosa, where the cook kept complaining and Usopp and Chopper made gagging noises behind his back. Zoro isn't exactly complaining. It's not like they've got anywhere to be except for chasing Zoe, and the itch to touch every waking moment of the day will probably fade over time, just as it has before. For now, it's nice to express and receive the casual profundity of their relationship. So life on Rooster's boat is good, even if everyone is way too invested in his and Lucy's SX life. It's been a non-stop ride since reuniting in Saiboti, and it's nice to settle for a little while. Robin is way too good at dropping innuendos that he only figures out hours later. Half the crew is missing along with their ship, and Kaido hovers on the edge of Zoro's thoughts, but the Bardo Club ship bobs across the water and they'll deal with challenges as they come. Even if he does have an unfortunately persistent headache throbbing in his temples. Lucy pokes him in the forehead, and he scowls, blinking up at her. She grins at him, unrepentant, and draws her fingers through his hair. "You're thinking too hard," Lucy chides. She shifts a little and leans against Usopp, and Zoro's head slides down toward her knees. "Torao said you should sleep if you want your headache to go away." "Maybe it's alcohol withdrawal," Usopp muses, looking slightly put out. "They don't have any on the ship because someone drank it all within 2 days." Zoro narrows his eye. "It ain't my fault they didn't pack enough booze. They had an entire cargo hold filled with liquor, sword bro." Frankie tinkers with his arm, wielding a screwdriver. Zoro thinks it's kind of weird and kind of genius that Frankie can put himself back together with nothing but a Phillips head, but it's still weird, seeing the cyborg's innards like this. Usopp doesn't seem to have a problem with it, and keeps asking questions, but Zoro turns to look up at the sky, partially obstructed by Lucy, and the hat waving in the wind at the end of its string. "I said what I said. A single cargo hold is nowhere near enough. Even the cook knows that. Regardless, there will likely be no available alcohol to imbibe until we reach Zoe," Robin comments lightly. She sits elegantly on a crate nearby, knees tucked daintily beneath her with a book open in her lap, and a wide-brimmed hat on her head. "Robin, what book are you reading?" Lucy asks, her voice light and relaxed. Zoro feels relaxed too, despite the headache pulsing at the base of his skull. Her voice feels warm and syrupy. Content. And the warm camaraderie from his Nakama seeps into him as the ship rocks gently and the wind plays over the deck. I am revisiting the story of Orla, Robin replies. She nods to the cabin. Rooster Coon had a copy of her tale in his library. Again, Lucy asks, like she can't imagine ever desiring to read a story more than once. Robin's eyes are sharp and there's something sly and amused about her smile. Would you like me to read it for you? I want to hear it, Usopp calls, excited. Zoro waits for Chopper to echo his enthusiasm, and grows vaguely frustrated with himself when the doctor's eager ramblings don't appear. They'll join up with the others soon, the cook is with them. I guess it was a good story, Lucy replies. She's taken to playing with the fraying threads of his t-shirt, her knuckles brushing his collarbone in irregular, distracting bursts. But Zoro is suddenly too tired to swat her hand away. Start from wherever you are, though. Go ahead, Robin. Frankie trills. Zoro doesn't think too hard about the fact that the cyborg's fingernail just fell off. Very well. Orla is about to enter a great and roiling sea of uncertain breadth and fathomless depth, Robin explained. The sea itself called its child, the siren song of her dreams beckoning her forth. She said to her friends, "We shall see what there is to see, and know what there is to know," and they answered, "We are with you, daughter of the family known across all seas." They followed her into the great unknown, that most dangerous and unkind sea, and were happy with their choice. The fog of sleep creeps over Zoro. His limbs are weightless and warm, and Lucy's cool fingers soothe the ache throbbing at his temples, if only just a bit. He cannot recall when he closed his eyes. None could know that day, but soon she would be known across every sea as Orla the Thunder Goddess, the first to go where no one would. She was known as a destroyer, but wherever she passed, her fires gave way to new growth, and the people she met would do nothing but insist upon her kindness. This person sounds familiar, Usopp mutters dryly. You think? Lucy asks obliviously, but she sounds far away, and Zoro doesn't quite muster the energy to snort. Just a bit, Aneki, Frankie adds fondly. Robin clears her throat pointedly. Sorry, Robin. Lucy laughs easily. Usopp echoes her sentiment and asks, how does it end? Well, I think, Robin answers, and even half-asleep Zoro can see the knowing light in her eye as clearly as he can feel the push and pull of Lucy's lungs and the warm salt wind across his face. But I will not be spoiling it until we get there. You shouldn't either, Sencho. I don't even remember the ending, Lucy replies cheerfully, and Frankie chuckles when Usopp sighs. Robin, taking no more input from the peanut gallery, continues. Orla did not set out to be a conqueror or heroine. Though some would name her so, she wished only to live for adventure, to seek freedom and her dreams on distant shores. And on her greatest journey into the greatest of seas, she loved and lost and loved again, and forever chased her dreams. 6 days out from Dressrosa, Lucy makes her way over to Frankie and Robin, snacking on a plate of sandwiches. She feels a little bad for taking so much from Rooster's kitchen when it will take to get to Zoe, but Lucy can't help it. She's hungry, and dinner isn't for another 2 hours. She'll starve if she waits that long. Nobody quite believes her on that count, but she doesn't care so long as she gets her food anyway. She misses Sanji. He always brings her and Robin and Nami snacks between meals. Hey Frankie, Lucy greets, plopping down before him. What you doing? Aneki, Frankie returns. He shows her the open plate on his right arm. Just fixing a few things. Had to do a bit of a patch job back there. Lucy hums, peering at Frankie's arm innards curiously. Frankie's so cool he built himself, but Lucy would never in her wildest dreams be able to tell what was going on with his arm. Frankie is, like, Robin level smart, which is cool. You're still working on that? Usopp asks. He's wincing, having come down with the same mysterious headache that's been bugging Zoro since yesterday. Are ya missing some parts? Couple things, Frankie replies nonchalantly, and tests his hand's range of motion. One of the ball bearings cracked in half. Gotta forge a new one on Sunny. Usopp and Robin both make understanding noises of comprehension. Lucy nods with definitive confidence, like she has any idea what they're talking about. Robin hides a giggle behind her book. How are you, God Usopp? Robin asks teasingly, but there's a note of genuine concern in her voice too. Is your headache still there? Usopp grimaces, whether from the epithet or the reminder of his headache, Lucy isn't sure. Usopp affirms as he fiddles with Kabuto and his supply of pop greens. Lucy knows he's getting low on the ladder, and he's probably eager to restock. He looks off toward the prow of the Barto Club, eyebrows drawn in frustration, and admits, "It's getting worse, too." Frankie and Robin exchange a glance. Lucy looks to the back of the ship, where Zoro is trouncing one of Rooster's swordsmen. He's winning easily, so much so that the spar is more like a training session for the other swordsman rather than an actual exercise of skill. But Lucy knows Zoro, and she knows his game is ever so slightly off. Torao tried to make him take pain meds, but Zoro refused. Lucy would make him, but she hates the damn things too. They make it hard to fight. Harder than a headache already does. Chopper'll look them over when we get to Zoe, Lucy tells her crew. 3 pairs of eyes lock onto her face and she smiles brilliantly for them. Rooster's navigator says the water's getting all weird, so we're probably close. And Chopper's the best, so they'll be fine. The 3 of them blink, and then 3 fond smiles respond to her own. She doesn't tell them that a knot of pain's been blooming at her temples since noon. It's Zoro who realizes she's got a headache too, of course. She didn't really expect to be able to hide it for long, and at dinner that evening he frowns at her across the table and asks her about it. This causes Frankie and Robin to, well, not quite fret, but Frankie hovers and looks a little weepy and blacks out their rooms so they have somewhere dark and quiet to ride out the worst symptoms, and Robin smiles really creepily at anyone who makes an aggravatingly loud noise, which is deeply appreciated by the other 3. It's Torao who figures out what's going on though, and why it's only the 3 of them who've come down with a persistent, and growing, headache. "It's your observation haki," he explains, or rather, it's Zoe's. "You can only sense living things with haki," Zoro corrects. "You can't sense an island, and definitely not this far away." Zoe is, Torao pauses. "You'll see. But everything has a presence you can sense with haki, right? A passive one?" Lucy nods, and notices Usopp paying close attention. "So Zoe is giving off signals your brains are picking up on, but you're having trouble processing." Torao shrugs. "I don't use observation haki, so I don't know, but it seems like the most likely explanation for your symptoms." Which is a shame, because Torao would probably be really good at it. But Lucy frowns, thinking of Sanji and how sharp his haki is. If she and Zoro and Usopp have a persistent, if irritating, headache, Sanji probably had a full-blown migraine. So what'll happen when we get there? Torao shrugs. "No idea. You'll probably get used to it though. The minks wouldn't have settled there otherwise." So they sail on and the waters get more and more turbulent throughout the night as storm clouds boil overhead and fog gathers cloyingly around the ship. Early in the morning, Lucy finds a perch atop the mizzenmast of Rooster's ship, and Rooster's crew files in to man the oars as the waves toss the ship. The roiling waters grow darker and the waves steeper and the current tries to guide them back and away from their goal. Even Lucy can see that it's kind of odd though. The sea is rarely rhythmic and patterned about anything. And the large waves keep coming periodically, every minute or so from off the starboard bow. It's almost like a wake. There's little wind, too, and for all the storm clouds threatened, the rain is barely more than a fine mist. In other words, this storm is no fun, that's annoying. Especially since her head feels like it's about to split open. But she stays up top anyway, seeking a break in the clouds or a lighthouse in the distance, warning them of rocky shores. Strangely predictable though the sea might be, it still doesn't take long for the oarsmen to tire. The current is strong, even disregarding the waves, and Rooster's crew isn't large enough to have multiple rotations. "I'm telling you, draw the ship to starboard," Torao repeats for the umpteenth time as he chases Rooster around the deck. The sun must be rising because the gray soup clinging to everything is starting to take a rosy, golden hue. "It'll be easier on your crew." "He's right, Rooster-kun," Robin chimes in with a gentle smile. "The sea will be calmer." Rooster makes one of those weird squealing noises he sometimes does when Lucy or her crew directly addresses him. Thankfully he doesn't pass out, like that time a couple days ago when Lucy asked if he wanted to spar, and instead gives the order to turn the ship to starboard. The waves cease almost immediately, the water's going still and quiet, and the current that was pushing them back. "It's pulling us forward?" Usopp asks, bewildered, and then his eyes widen in realization. What is it?" Lucy pesters, jumping down from the mizzenmast. "It's no fun when there's no big waves anyway." Usopp starts, staring off the ship's prow before sending Torao an uncertain look. Torao doesn't respond, and Lucy looks between them curiously as Frankie lets out a low whistle behind her, staring into the clouds with the same baffled expression that Usopp bears. "What?" Lucy demands, now a little frustrated, but before they can answer, Zoro reaches out to take her shoulder and turns her around to face the ship's prow. There amid the ashy fog stands a pillar, right in the middle of the sea. A column so wide the clouds wrap around it like smoke, obscure it partially from view. It goes up and up and up until it disappears, the same color as the graying sky. Beyond the pillar something long and vaguely leathery swings into view between the strips of fog. But the image makes little sense. Her temples throb in pain, her haki rebelling against information she can't put together, just as her eyes do not grasp the form of the shapes she's seeing. Not the massive globe of leathery stone hanging above the sea beyond the pillar, or why the ship moves closer and closer to the pillar even without wind in their sails or even waves to carry them on. Then the pillar moves, shifts forward in sudden and terrible rush of muscle and sinew, and like a puzzle piece snapping into place Lucy understands. It's a Zo, Lucy whispers in awe. Pain in her temples spikes again, enough that she brings the heel of her palm to her head as the pain screeches higher and the giant elephant's voice echoes louder and louder inside her skull. Usopp complains. Robin makes a curious noise, but Lucy's too busy agreeing with him to comment. In her mind's eye, the place where haki whispers in vibrations and music, the elephant booms like the very turning of the earth made into sound, the frictionless grind of spinning rock in a vacuum, endless violence constrained to silence, and yet so loud she can barely comprehend it, so bright it nearly burns her eyes from her skull. But beneath it all there is a melody, something old and as ancient as the sea, a slow, steady beat on a calfskin drum. It is this Lucy focuses on until the booming echoes subside and resolve to form the shadow of a voice, incomplete but comprehensible, enough so that her eyes can take the strain of the elephant's presence. The pain throbbing in her skull peaks unbearably, then wanes. Lucy opens her eyes. She doesn't remember closing them, to see Frankie staring down at her with a concerned frown on his face. She has an arm slung over Zoro's shoulders as he holds her up. She didn't even notice him. She can barely hear anything at all over the elephant's overwhelming presence. And though he seems steady, he looks a shade paler than usual. Her knees feel weak and shaky, and Lucy can guess that Zoro caught her in the middle of her distraction. And his own, presumably. Usopp, poor, untrained Usopp, leans over the ship's railing to retch. Robin pats his back with a disembodied arm, not risking getting caught in the splash zone. One of Rooster's nakama offers Usopp a stick of gum uncertainly, and Lucy can't help the tired grin that crosses her lips when she sees it. "Straw Hat Ya," Torao calls. She looks up to see Torao raise an eyebrow at her, questioning. Lucy's vision is a little blurry, but she's pretty sure this is his way of asking after her welfare. "I'm good," she reassures. "Zo's just loud. He must be, if you were sensing him almost a day away, sword bro." Frankie adds he still looks concerned, but less so than a moment ago. Behind him, Kinemon and Kanjuro restrain Rooster, despite the guy's determined declarations to claw his way to Lucy Dono's side. "No kidding," Zoro grumbles. Instinctively, Lucy forces her feet to carry her, an easy task with Zoro there to lean against. When her knees stabilize, she stands on her own and Zoro releases her without prompting. "What the hell," Usopp complains, having recovered himself. Robin offers him a glass of water, this time without use of her devil fruit, and Usopp gargles it a few times before drinking eagerly even as he complains. "It's a cool power," they said. "Perfect for a sniper," they said. "It's useful," they said. He continues, but Lucy's attention strays back to Zo, and notices for the first time the splash of color where the elephant's legs sank into the sea. "Sunny," Lucy calls in delighted recognition. She squints at the deck, wary of using her haki to search for her nakama lest Zo's voice overwhelm her again, but she can't see anyone there. "Guess that's the best they could do without a dock," Frankie muses, eyeing the resin-soaked ropes latching the Sunny to Zo's legs skeptically. But he's grinning too, and Lucy figures he's just as glad to see their nakama and home as she is. "I suppose the others are above?" Robin asks, her gaze traveling up and up and up into the clouds, where the elephant's back is obscured by fog. "Yeah," Torao replies offhandedly. The Millennium City of the Minx rests on Zoe's back. Lucy looks up into the clouds, sees the curve of Zoe's back outlined faintly in the fog, and lets jittery excitement shift her feet. Her nakama are up there, and soon she'll have them all within reach, and she'll make sure Sanji teaches Usopp observation haki because she and Zoro aren't that great at it, and tell Nami everything she remembers about Dressrosa and give her the map she had Rooster steal so she can make her own and hug Chopper and ask Brook to sing Binks' sake in. Right, Lucy decides, pressing her hat to her hair. Zoro shifts beside her into a battle-ready stance she's sure is unconscious. Robin's eyes shine with something close to eagerness. And even poor Usopp grins back at her as she sets her sights on the elephant's back. Let's go see them then. Frankie lets out a joyous super, and Lucy finds that she couldn't agree more. Zoe is a big-ass elephant, and Zoe has a big ass. The thought is kind of unavoidable as they ascend to the city of the Minx. Kanjuro and Kinemon, who presumably know a little more about the place than even Law, fell off almost immediately, of course, and after that there wasn't a whole lot to do other than contemplate the truly epic proportions of the elephant's backside. It was either that or focus on Lucy's impatient squirming, and considering how close they all have to press together to even fit on the dragon. Well, the elephant's posterior was preferable to say the least. She did finally settle down a little after Frankie and Robin took pity on him and explained the physical consequences of rubber impacting water at terminal velocity. And why armament would likely not help her at all in such a situation. She still couldn't quite contain her enthusiasm about exploring a new place, especially a country as unique as this one. But near constant stream of excited babbling and occasional sudden gesture of anticipation made manifest was much preferred to having her wiggling in his lap so much he was tempted to just throw her off himself. He gets it though. He's been long since infected by Lucy's love of exploration. All the Straw Hats are, and Zoe is so strange and unknown that it reminds Zoro of Skypiea, just a little. Admittedly, that might just be the ridiculous ascent up a vertical plane, but the parallels weren't lost on him. Spending the better part of a day climbing an elephant's backside was not on Zoro's bucket list, but he can admit it was cool. The sunset was nice enough. He caught the red tones in Lucy's hair. Zoro was more than ready to get to the top of the elephant though, if for no other reason than he pitied the dragon. Crying over the damn thing was a bridge too far though. This is ridiculous, Zoro grumbles, watching his nakama weep over the ridiculously dramatic death of Ryunosuke. Thankfully, Law is not nearly as quick to befriend aggrieved life forms as his nakama. It's just a drawing, he agrees, vaguely disbelieving. The others pull themselves together eventually, though. Lucy, as per her usual approach to exploring a new place, almost immediately charges past him and Law and then launches herself up to the top of the looming marigold walls. The stone bears intricate designs interspersed with vines and trees growing into the structure. No one mounts the gate, apparently, because Lucy meets no resistance as she disappears over the other side of the bell tower. It figures, Zoro supposes, that there would be no real need for defenses. If the Minx were expecting an attack, the elephant itself would act as their fortress. Picking any attackers off Zoe's legs during the climb would be easy, and if someone made it to the top, the Minx would just attack him or her as a group. It's bothersome that Zoro can't sense anyone nearby with his haki so handicapped by Zoe. He's going to be slower to react than usual in the event of an attack, especially on his left side. It probably won't get any better, either, because the others would have met them at the top at Sanji's behest otherwise. Fucking Cook was good with observation haki. Ah well. The Minx are meant to be allies anyway, so far as Zoro can tell, and the giant elephant defense will work just as well for them as it has for the Minx. Oi, Robin, Usopp calls, frowning at the carvings in the gate as their party passes through. Don't these look like Skypiea? Robin asks, her eyes soaking in the etchings eagerly, her hands already filled with her notebook and pen. Yes, and no, these are older by about 3 centuries. 200 years before the Void Century, and yet, some of these characters are similar to the alphabet in the ruins we found, a related ancient government. The Shandorians were descendants of the people who built those ruins, but they only cared about the bell, so it is possible the cultural significance of that place was lost to them. Zoro tunes her out. The ruins must really be something, because Robin almost never rambles like this, But he needs to pay attention to where he's walking with his blind spot more onerous than usual, and he kind of doesn't care. As it turns out, his extra attention pays off when he stops just short of tripping over two large, oxidized iron gates. Iron gates whose hinges are shredded off their pins. Zoro looks around, just shy of eager for an opponent to battle. The city of the minks is large and expansive, built right into the elephant's hide with lichen and moss and green trees framing the massive stone buildings. The city and forest seem merged, like they grow from one another, but above it all is a tree the size of Mahawk's castle in the shape of a whale. The streets are empty though, deserted, and far too quiet. Not far from the gates, two structures loom. Each two beams crossed in an X, dark stains modeling the wood in different places. Zoro knows what a crucifix looks like, so much for elephant defense. Lucis disappeared on them already, of course. He didn't really expect any different, given her eagerness. But with the city seemingly deserted and an unknown attacker that could pose a threat to a civilization as old as this one possibly on the loose, the urge to go find his nakama now increases tenfold. Also the urge to facepalm, but he ignores that bit. Oi, curly brow. He bellows, his left hand cupped near his mouth to focus the sound. See which? Chop. Usopp, clearly possessed of more faith in Zoro's ability to tell friend from foe than he has in himself at the moment, leaps gracelessly onto his back and slaps his vaguely sticky hand across his mouth. Zoro twists away from him, but Usopp is scrappy when he wants to be. And even if he's annoyed, Zoro doesn't actually want to hurt him by, say, slicing his hand off or something equally permanent. So Usopp clings to him like a slightly cowardly octopus and whisper hisses, "What if they're still here?" Then Zoro will get a good fight in and take a nap after. It's better than waiting around to get ambushed. And he wouldn't have to keep wondering if passing out is an acceptable trade-off for figuring out where everyone is via haki. "Guys!" Lucy calls from the city. Their party looks up to see her bounding through one of the empty streets. A big grin fixed on her face. This place is so cool, but she stops a few paces away from them, a little furrow of confusion between her eyebrows. No one's here though, it's all empty. That's not super, Frankie agrees gravely. It doesn't make sense, Law adds, inspecting the fallen gates and the strange footprint in the elephant skin ground. The minks have lived on Zou for 1,000 years and never fallen. A simple attack wouldn't take them out. Even a big attack wouldn't eradicate them completely. That would mean they're either hiding, hoping the Straw Hats would go away, or they're. A branch snaps. 6 heads flinch toward the tree line. Usopp-kun, Robin Whisper warns. The sniper releases Zoro and promptly hides behind him without question. They stand silent and ready for one heartbeat, then two. Usopp shifts his weight, uncertain. Lucis' nostrils flare, like a coonhound scenting prey. Zoro lets his aura spike with bloodlust. Usopp flinches behind him, but stays his ground. Lucy eyes him for half a beat, and he knows she understands his tactic, knows the strategy, is willing to go along with it, but doesn't necessarily like it much. Another branch breaks, this time from behind. Usopp and Frankie both turn toward the noise. Zoro loosens Watto from the sheath. Without haki, he's relying on instincts for battle honed sharp and fine over a lifetime, which is almost as good. His blind spot weighs heavier than usual, but his gut draws his gaze to a point behind him, and his aura will draw attention to him, mislead the attacker into thinking he's the biggest threat. He'd probably go for Zoro first anyways, considering the eye. And he'll come on my left. Zoro reminds himself, his grin promising retribution for the presumption of weakness. Watto slips another centimeter out of the sheath. It happens in the next moment. A rush of white at breakneck speeds, the crackling of electricity, and his instincts blaring danger. 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 As he sweeps into a devastating lunge aimed at cutting his opponent in half. But his blade doesn't land, not because he missed his mark, but because the assailant changed velocities in midair. Right into his blind spot. He can't see the white blur at all, and instead reacts entirely on instinct by raising Watto to protect his face and half-drawing Shisui to protect his body as he turns to put the attacker in his sights. A hit bears down on his blades, and Watto hums a clear, ringing tone as electricity flickers across the steel. His assailant is strong, but nowhere near strong enough to knock him back, even with her advantage in motility. Zoro is a rock, and the slight strain in his arms, the numb tingling in his hands, it's nowhere near enough to make him back down. His grin is a terrible gash across his face, tinged with battle lust. Her momentum discharges into him and she flips away. When she lands near the tree line, her eyes dart back and forth across the 6 members of their party, each standing with weapons and fists at the ready. She's either a mink or a devil fruit user, with her white fur and fluffy tail. But the way she analyzes them, looking for weakness, would speak of competence in battle even if she hadn't just surprised him. It'd probably be over in a few seconds if he had access to Haki, but at the moment they're a little closer to an even playing field. Not by much, but he thinks a fight against her would be fun. Good way to practice fighting blind, so to speak. "Hi," Lucy calls, sensing the lull in the fight because of course she does. "I'm Monkey D. Lucy, and I'm gonna be the Pirate King. Who are you?" The rabbit mink blinks, startled. "Monkey D. Lucy?" she asks, her whole face lighting with recognition. "Monkey D. Lucy, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates?" "Uh-huh," Lucy replies, casual and unconcerned and friendly. "But what's your gnaw?" The rabbit disappears, gone in a flash of white against the green of her homeland. Zoro lets his bloodlust dissipate a little reluctantly. "Huh," Usopp mutters, lowering Kabuto slowly. "That was." She recognized Lucy, Robin adds, "and us? She's probably going to get reinforcements," Law growls, clearly annoyed. Zoro nods to him, "Glad someone's actually thinking here. We should go after her." Lucy scratches the back of her head, her nose scrunched so that some of her freckles meet. "Do you think she knows where Sanji and the others are?" "They're our best bet to find out," Frankie declares, pounding his massive fists together. Still a weird habit, if you ask Zoro. "Let's go then," Lucy declares cheerfully, and Zoro just barely manages to catch her by the collar of her shirt before she charged off into the forest alone. "We shouldn't split up," Zoro tells her. She smooths her collar down, frowning at it, and then grins at him with far too much energy. "Okay," she agrees easily. Too easily. "Let's go fast." Lucis Nakama take a wary step away from her, all too familiar with Lucis' definition of fast travel and her preferred methods of achieving it. Poor, stupid Law just blinks at them, clearly bewildered. "Lucy, no, I don't want to die. I would prefer to walk, Sencho. We made a rule about this, Aneki. Remember the rule." Law takes all this in with a slow blink, and then sets his icy gaze on Lucy as comprehension dawns. "Touch me and die, Straw Hat yaw." Lucy frowns at them all, completely uncomprehending. "But you said." "Lucy?" The voice is familiar, and it's been missing from the crew for almost 2 weeks. The 6 of them turn back to the tree-line red-headed woman in a blue dress stumble out of the forest. They all stare at each other for a few seconds, stunned in spite of themselves. But Lucy is the first to react, throwing herself at their navigator gleefully just as Nami runs to meet her. The 2 girls catch each other in a hug, their smiles huge as they babble eager questions that go unanswered in the face of each other's enthusiasm, and then everyone but Law steps forward to greet their missing comrade. Zoro even lets Nami punch him, which makes Lucy smile, and he will never admit the relief. The slight relief he feels at seeing her safe and sound. And then Lucy asks a question, innocent and innocuous as anyone might expect. "Are Sanji and the others going to fall out of the forest too?" Lucy theatrically puts her hand over her eyes, as if expecting the others to be hiding in the trees. Nami's face falls. She bites her lip. "What is it?" Zoro asks lowly. Nami doesn't usually hesitate. Especially not when it comes to the cook. "Chopper and Brook and Momo are fine, of course," she starts. Her eyes get a little watery. "But Sanji-kun." "Sanji what?" Lucy asks, her eyebrows furrowing in confusion. "Is he okay?" Nami's face cracks, and her chin wobbles just a little as a few tears roll down her cheeks. But when she speaks her voice doesn't waver. "He's gone." Lucy's face goes blank. Usopp and Robin share a look, and Frankie asks, "Gone? Where to?" Zoro places a hand on Kitetsu's hilt as the blade wails ever louder in his head. He has a bad feeling about this.